Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became her secret crush part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 from fanfiction. So let's start the video. As I said, Midoriya, you're better in math. So you'll be the one to take that. I can take traditional Japanese, Shoto said. Izuku, though nervous, nodded. It's not like the ice user was wrong. Bakugo, not a chance. Shoto sighed in defeat. The three of them were currently at Endeavor's Hero Agency, undergoing a work-study program. Needless to say, it wasn't easy. Keeping up with the #1 hero was a hell of a job. The three of them, however, were determined to get the most out of this opportunity. That would be exactly the case for our green-haired protagonist. After the day was over, they were in a private vehicle on their way to the Todoroki household, where Endeavor was waiting for them. Izuku was visibly nervous, as he recollected his last encounter with the Flame Hero. Bakugo wasn't really one to show any emotions, hinting at unease, although he had his ever-present scowl. After a little while, and some banter between Bakugo and the driver, they finally arrived. Shoto led them up to the door, and they knocked. Creak. Someone peeped out of the door, before jumping back, seeing her brother standing with 2 others. Sorry, how rude of me, she yelped, stepping aside for them. Izuku took a good look at her and... Shit, it wasn't loud, but they did hear him mutter something to himself. I'm Fuyumi Todoroki, Shoto's older sister. It's nice to meet you, she said as they entered. Katsuki Bakugo, the Pomeranian said in a bizarrely civilized tone. I 𝗧𝗵𝗲 the green-haired boy managed to stutter out. Oh, I know you. You're the guy that fought Shoto in the sports festival, she said in an excited voice. They'll be joining us for dinner. A heavy voice spoke up, as Endeavor walked into the room. It became noticeably more tense as Shoto slightly glared at his father. Fuyumi, sensing this, intervened. So, it was nice you to invite them over, Dad, Endeavor grunted, though it seemed she understood what he meant by that. Was it always like this in their house? Quietly, they followed Shoto to the dining room after dropping off their stuff. Dinner was a very quiet affair. Fuyumi tried breaking the ice with small talk, but as with most times, gave up eventually. However, the awkwardness was more than doubled after a heated spat between Endeavor and Natsu, Endeavor's other son. Fuyumi looked saddened seeing Endeavor leave the room, and she glared at Natsu. That was uncalled for. He deserves even worse, Natsu cut back. Bakugo dragged Izuku by the collar out of the tense room. Thanks for the save. I don't think I could stay a second longer, Izuku said with a sigh. Why do they even talk about something that sensitive in front of strangers? The blonde growled out. They both cringed, hearing another raising of voices before Natsu stormed out of the room, with Shoto closely behind him. Izuku kind of wished he never even accepted the invitation. At least he wouldn't be dragged into this. Out of curiosity, he peeked back in the dining room to see Fuyumi sitting alone, saddened. A part of him just wanted to leave her alone to herself. After all, it wasn't his business. But again, a hero is someone who meddles in people's business. He reminisced on when All Might said those words. At least he hoped that's what All Might actually said, and he didn't hear wrong. Fuyumi was pulled out of her thoughts by Izuku's voice. Are you okay? He asked nervously. Yeah, just peaky, she sniffled. It doesn't seem like it, Izuku countered, pointing out the fact that she was crying. Who am I kidding? I'm not fine, you can see for yourself why. It's always like this, and I just want everyone to get along. Izuku looked down, truly knowing what to say in this situation. He had 0 experience in this department. I can't say I understand your situation. But for what it's worth, you did your best. Fuyumi smiled a bit at him, mostly because seeing him all robot-like was amusing. You're shivering, she pointed out. It happens. I'm used to it by now, he replied with his head dropping a bit. She chuckled. I appreciate you trying to cheer me up. Thanks. Izuku had a small tint of red dust his face. It's nothing. He offered to help out with the dishes, and they both got to talk a bit, before Bakugo joined them, not wanting to come across as rude. Thanks for the help, you too, Fuyumi said, smiling at the 2 boys. Soon it was time to leave, and they all bid their goodbyes. Thank you again, Midoriya, Fuyumi said, clasping his hands in hers. It was all too much for the poor boy, who did his best to hide his reaction. It was nothing, he managed to stutter out. Let's get going. We don't want to stay out past curfew, Shoto said, waving his sister goodbye. Izuku felt something in his hand when Fuyumi let him go. It was a piece of paper. Thank you for having us, Izuku said with a bow, and they all entered the vehicle that drove off. The hell was all that about? Bakugo asked in a voice that only Izuku could hear. Beats me. I'm just as confused as you are, he replied in a hushed tone. They all headed to their rooms immediately after dropping. Izuku sighed, flopping onto his bed. He had been put through the ringer, both physically and mentally today. That's right, I almost forgot. He began but paused as he looked at the piece of paper. On it, staring at him, was a phone number. Not just any phone number. Fuyumi Todoroki. Wait. What? Izuku sat in his room, the next morning, looking at the piece of paper with Fuyumi's number on it. He wasn't sure what she meant giving it to him, but he should at least save it. It did take him a few tries of head shaking, pinching himself and yelling the word Kai to come to the conclusion that it was really real. A girl, no, a woman willingly gave him her contact info. Guess that's all my good fortune gone for the year, he said, chuckling to himself. It was a Saturday, so he didn't have to worry about either running around trying to get everyone out of bed. As he typed in the number into his phone, the question hung over his head. Now what? Should he dial her? She was probably busy, and he didn't want to intrude. Not as if he wasn't already going down the path of no return. Fuyumi was, dare say, the most attractive woman he had seen, although he never really looked at girls before. But this was different. The aura she had, the way she smiled, how her eyes seemed to glimmer. He had seen her before, but not in person. Needless to say, he was quite happy he did see her in person. Could he say he had a crush on her already? Probably. 𝐵ZZT. Crap. He had unknowingly pressed the dial button, and before he could hang up, the call was accepted. Hello? Hello, this is Midoriya, your brother's classmate. We came over for dinner yesterday, Izuku said, mentally cursing himself. Oh, Midoriya, it's nice to hear from you. I was worried you lost the paper I gave you yesterday, so she actually gave it to him. Permit me to ask, but why did you give me your number? Fuyumi was silent for a few seconds. You seem interesting, and you're Shoto's first friend, so I wanted to see for myself, you know. Me? Interesting. I think you'll change your mind about that pretty soon, Izuku said in a lower tone. How so? You gotta have something going for you if Shoto sees you the way he does. Maybe you're just hard on yourself, Izuku chuckled, not having an immediate answer. I have to go now. I'll send you a text, K. Bye, beep. She's way more energetic than I thought. Kinda like a Shido, he thought to himself. He went downstairs where his classmates gathered for their usual routine. Kirishima was working out, Bakugo yelling, Momo and Jiro in the kitchen area, Mainta and Kaminari doing whatever they did every Saturday morning. Izuku smiled to himself. It was pretty rowdy, but it was home. Good morning, Midoriya. I hope you slept well, Ida greeted. I did. What about you? It was splendid, Ida responded in his typical way. Would you like some tea, Midoriya? Momo asked from the kitchen. I would, thank you, he said, walking over and taking a seat. A few minutes later, Momo slid his cup over to him. I do hope it's to your liking. Thank you, Yaoyorozu, he said, taking a sip. Just then his phone buzzed. BZZT. He opened it to see Fuyumi's message. Todoroki-san. Sorry I was called for something urgent, but I'm done now. How are you doing? Whatcha up to? Izuku juggled the phone and the cup of tea, earning curious looks from his female companions. Dude, what's gotten you all jittery? Jiro asked with a raised eyebrow. It was unusual to see him on his phone. Could it be an important message? Izuku quickly waved off the questions. I guess so. It's someone important, he said in a bit of uncertainty. Momo didn't pry further, though she was now curious. Jiro just went back to what she was doing previously. Izuku typed and deleted, then again and again, until his body had enough and pressed the send button before his mind would deem the message unfit and delete it again. Izuku, I'm doing well, and right now I'm not really doing anything. What about you? Now that he had sent it, one word came to his mind. Lame. His phone buzzed again a few seconds later. Todoroki-san. Well, I'm free from school stuff today, so yay. It's been pretty hectic lately. Izuku. I get that. We also have been pushed harder by the school, Todoroki-san. Yeah, Shoto has mentioned that recently. I think it's because of All Might's retirement and all, Izuku. Most likely, villain attacks have been getting rather frequent, Todoroki-san. Huh. I actually thought you'd stutter over text. I'm kind of bummed out, Izuku. I only do that in person. I'm not the best when it comes to people, Todoroki-san. Hey, I know this is pretty much out of the blue, but would you like to meet up somewhere? Eh? Izuku yelled in surprise, attracting the attention of his classmates. Something wrong, Midoriya? His classmate asked, a bit concerned at his sudden outburst. Nothing, I'm fine, he replied almost too quickly. He looked down at the screen inside. Izuku, what do you have in mind? How did I find myself here? Izuku was standing in the middle of one of the major malls in the surrounding area. He was a good distance away from school and was currently waiting for Fuyumi, hoping he didn't get the wrong mall. He checked his phone again. Yep, this is definitely the right place, he said to himself. He heard a shuffle of fast-paced footsteps behind him and turned to see Fuyumi lightly running towards him. Hey Midoriya, sorry I'm late. Hope you didn't wait long, she asked worriedly, taking a few moments to catch her breath. Now Izuku was by no means a pervert, but come on. Any sane man would be caught off guard by her very endowed figure, especially the Jigglies. No, I got here like 5 minutes ago, he said, watching her sigh in relief. Thank goodness. Now let's get to it, she said, turning in a particular direction and motioning for him to follow her. Izuku quirked an eyebrow. 𝐔𝐬𝐽, what exactly? He asked, a bit confused. Fuyumi then realized she never explained anything to him and facepalmed. I'm such a scatterbrain. Sorry, I needed some help shopping. I can't ask Dad or Natsu. Shoto never agrees, and that leaves you. Izuku felt a bit of relief, then disappointment. He was half expecting a date, but again he wasn't expecting one. You'd have to be in his situation to get it, but he was happy regardless, so he'll take what he could get. I don't think why you know me well enough for me to accompany you on a shopping trip. He voiced out his concern. Fuyumi furrowed her eyebrows as a small frown appeared, but it quickly faded away. We have a lot of time for that, don't you think? I guess so. What are you doing? He asked, leaning backwards due to her sudden closeness to him. Fuyumi was inches away from his face, although she was on her toes. You're taller than I thought, she pointed out. Izuku had a sweat drop. She really did seem out of it, in a cute way that is. He followed her around the mall and quickly found out why Shoto refused to help her out. Is all this really necessary? Izuku was holding about 3 bags in each hand, and Fuyumi showed no signs of slowing down. This could give his one-for-all training a run for its money. Okay, maybe not. And done, Fuyumi declared. Izuku sighed in relief, thanking whoever was up there. They were heading back out when suddenly GRRR. Fuyumi turned an embarrassed shade of red and looked away. I'm guessing you haven't eaten anything today, she nodded in agreement. But luckily for them, there was a nearby cafe. Izuku also found out that she had a sweet tooth, as she basically murdered the cupcakes they ordered. He silently slurped on his iced tea as she finally noticed what he was doing. What's going on in that head of yours? I was wondering how you're so free with someone you barely know, he said, looking down at his lap to avoid her gaze. Fuyumi smiled at him. If Shoto trusts you, then I think I can too. I can trust you, right? Thump, thump. Sure, you can. He noticed for whatever reason he wasn't stuttering around her. Maybe it was because of her laid-back personality, or something he himself was yet to discover. Hey Midoriya, I noticed your right arm's covered. What's that about? Fuyumi asked, pointing at his covered arm. Izuku winced a bit as the memories came back. Every single time he broke his bones, the torn muscles, damaged ligaments. Yeah, not exactly his fondest memories, injuries, and I'd much prefer if no one saw them, he said, with a visible flash of pain appearing on his face just from mentioning them. Fuyumi nodded in understanding. She had to say the boy's quirk was by far the most powerful she had ever seen. Watching the fight with Shoto, she could tell Midoriya held back, or at the very least wasn't using his full power, understandably so. The backlash of his quirk was absurd, and the damage it could do was possibly even more absurd. The boy could level a building without even trying. Terrifying, and a part of her was thankful that he wasn't at full power, or else her brother would probably be dead by now. Izuku, however, was assessing his situation. He went shopping with her, and now they were at a cafe. This was technically a date, right? Izuku bit into his cinnamon roll, with his eyes popping from how good they were, plus they were steaming hot, even better. I kinda used my quirk back there. Don't tell anyone, Kay? He nodded in amusement, though could see why she did that. No one likes cold pastry, well maybe Shoto, but he was a different story altogether. Has what happened that day been bothering you? Izuku asked suddenly. I can't say it has. I don't know what to do anymore. So I'm at a point where I could just give up, Fuyumi said in a somber tone. It's not my place to say anything. But I don't think you should give up so soon. And no matter the odds, there's always a way, he said in an uncharacteristically confident voice, and gave her a reassuring smile. Fuyumi slurped her drink, looking straight at him, making Izuku turn ever so slightly red. A small smirk grew on her face. I'll try, Midoriya, and thanks you. It's no problem. I didn't mind. It's nice to get away from my classmates once in a while. I'll be more prepared next time, he said absent-mindedly. Fuyumi blinked, then giggled. Next time. No, I didn't mean it that way, he exclaimed, trying to explain his intentions. It's fine, actually. I'd like to do this again as well. I know we don't yet know much about each other, but you seem like someone I can talk to. So if you don't mind, I'll be imposing on you a bit, Fuyumi said with a small smile. I'd be happy to help. They both headed to the Todoroki household first. Then Izuku went back to Ua. It was still afternoon, surprisingly. Hey Midoriya, where have you been? You just disappeared, Kirishima asked, appearing from the corner. I had something to take care of back at home. Sorry for not telling you guys, Izuku lied. He felt his phone vibrate through his pocket, and pulled it out, not liking the sensation. Todoroki-san, did you get back safe? He smiled and texted back. Izuku, yes I did. Thank you for today, it was fun. You know Midoriya, you've been awfully busy with that phone since yesterday. Are you hiding something? Mina asked, appearing next to him. No, I'm not a Shido, he said, wanting to put the matter to bed before she began her outrageous detective work. Maybe I'll spy on you till I find out, she said, putting her hand up to her chin in thought. Please don't. He went up to the elevator, and up to his room. There he pulled out his phone again. Todoroki-san, I should be the one thanking you, Midoriya, for today. And when we do this again, when, not if, he thought happily. Was it wrong that he was starting to like his friend's older sister? Who knows? Back at the Todoroki house, Natsu came out of his room. Did Shoto come back or something? Fuyumi glanced over to him, still a bit mad at what he did. He sighed. Look, I'm sorry about that, Fuyumi. I was in a pretty bad mood, and things slipped out. Apology accepted. And no, Shoto didn't come home today. He raised an eyebrow. So why was that kid, Midoriya here? He asked with a raised eyebrow. We went out for a bit, she said absent-mindedly. Natsuo looked confused, then burst into laughter as the realization hit him. He smirked at her. You move pretty fast, you know. What's so funny? She asked over his laughing. You realize what you two did was basically a date. And I think he was well aware of that, her brother said in between laughs. Fuyumi's face went beet red at the thought. I had no idea. That's why he was so tense. I even told him we would. Do it again, Natsu chuckled, much to her annoyance. Well, whatever floats your boat. You've never been free with a guy that wasn't me or Shoto, so I'm happy for you. Just don't fry the kid's brain, he said, walking away chuckling to himself. Fuyumi watched her brother leave, then looked at her phone. Fuyumi, did you know what we did was basically a date? It took a few seconds as the screen indicated he was typing something. Midoriya, yeah, I guess I did, but I didn't want to make things weird. Besides, why would you go on a date with someone like me? Fuyumi frowned at the text. What did he mean by that? Fuyumi, what do you mean someone like you? Again a few seconds passed. Midoriya, I'm pretty boring and plain. There's nothing special or noteworthy about me. Fuyumi frowned again. This won't do. She had a feeling as to why he was like this. After all, she too had been bullied before for not wanting to be a hero like her father. Fuyumi, don't say that, Midoriya. I don't know you much, but now I'm pretty sure that you do this all the time. You should give yourself credit. You have a lot going well for you. Midoriya, you think so? Fuyumi, yeah, in fact. Let's go on a date. What do you say? Midoriya, me? We. Fuyumi, yeah, you silly. I'll prove to you that you're not boring. You just need a little push, Izuku. Well, okay. Fuyumi, it's settled then. Remember that cafe? We'll meet there, tomorrow if it's okay with you. Can't have you going on a date in the middle of a school week, Midoriya. Makes sense. I'll see you then. I'm a bit tired, Fuyumi. Bye. Phew. Fuyumi exhaled, a bit of red on her face. What she was doing was technically wrong, and if someone found out, it was going to be bad, but meh, who cares? Oh man, Izuku exhaled. He was going on a date. He, Izuku, Midoriya. Another dream? Possibly, but at this point. I couldn't give a shit. Tap, tap, tap. Izuku's classmates watched him all throughout the day on his phone. He had changed a bit, He looked happier, more in tune with himself. What could possibly be the cause of all this? They were happy for him regardless. He needed some confidence, and it seemed whatever secret he was keeping from them was source of said confidence. Dude, you've been using your phone a lot lately, Mina pointed out. Izuku turned to her with a surprised look. Seriously? Yeah, and you still won't tell what's going on, she whined. Izuku chuckled at the girl's antics. You don't need to know that. Mina had a brief flash of inspiration. Is it perhaps that you have a girlfriend? She asked with a teasing tone. Success. Izuku choked and entered a coughing fit. No. It's not that, he wheezed out. Oh really? Then what's with the reaction? 𝐒𝐩 just caught me off guard is all, he said, waving her off. 𝐵ZZT, oh yeah, he forgot to reply. Todoroki-san, hello? You still there? Izuku. Yeah, sorry. I was being interrogated. Again, Todoroki-san. I see. I guess it's getting harder to keep up this little secret, right? Izuku. Yeah, sooner or later someone is gonna find out. Most preferably not Todoroki. I don't want him thinking I'm hitting on his sister. Todoroki-san. It kinda looks that way, I guess. Though I don't mind, Izuku. Haha, very funny, Todoroki-san. Also, if you're going to keep this up, you need to start calling me by my given name. The whole Todoroki thing is getting a bit confusing, isn't it? Izuku, really? You'd let me do that? Todoroki-san. Yeah, it's no biggie, Izuku. Okay then, tap tap tap, there, all done, he said, now looking at the name on the top of the screen. Fuyumi, she texted him again. Fuyumi, you done? Izuku. Yeah, although since it's come to this, you can call me by my given name as well, of course, if you want to Fuyumi. Okay then, it's a deal. By the way, I heard my dad talking about you guys coming for dinner again. Just hope nothing happens like last time, Izuku. Yeah, hopefully nothing happens, Fuyumi. I have to go now, school stuff. Bye, Izuku. Bye, he sighed and clicked off his phone. Hey Deku. Izuku tilted his head upwards, seeing Uraraka. Oh hey, he greeted back, smiling at his friend. You've been very busy lately, any problem? She asked, curious to his seemingly overnight change in demeanor. No, just work-study stuff. Endeavor's methods are taxing, he said with a small laugh. Uraraka looked at him. A part of her could tell he wasn't being completely honest, but she wasn't going to pry. Well then, you better get ready soon. You're gonna be late, she said, walking away. Izuku jumped up as he checked the time on his phone. He was so carried away that he had completely forgotten about time. Bakugo and Shoto walked down already in their hero outfits. Bakugo threw him the case containing his. You're a lifesaver. Thanks, Kacchan, whatever, let's get going already, he grunted out, walking past them. That's Bakugo for you, Shoto said. Izuku looked at his retreating figure with a smile. Wouldn't have him any other way. They got to the agency on time, lucky for them, and immediately joined Endeavor on patrols. By now all three of them were used to how Endeavor moved, and were each happy with their progress so far. Izuku had progressed the most out of all of them, and it was down to one thing: confidence. He was still a mile from being like Bakugo or All Might, but the little confidence he gained over the past few weeks had seen his quirk usage improve drastically, surprising not only Endeavor but All Might, who was confused as to how Endeavor managed to pull so much out of the boy in such a short time. Izuku could now use One for All at a base level of 40%, along with Black Whip, and something he hadn't yet revealed to anyone. Endeavor had taken notice to his progress, and wanted to know what brought about this. Izuku sat across the intimidating figure of Endeavor in a nervous state. Relax yourself. You're not here to be questioned, the man spoke up. Izuku took a deep breath to calm himself down, and spoke up. So, what did you want to say, sir? Endeavor cleared his throat, and after some seconds spoke up. Your quirk usage. I must say I'm impressed with how far you've grown since joining my agency. You've greatly exceeded my expectations, but something like this doesn't just come out of the blue. Did something happen recently? Izuku froze, so should he tell him? Hey Endeavor, the reason I've grown is because I've been speaking to your daughter. That would be some form of attempted suicide. I've been talking to someone recently. It has helped a lot in my mentality, though I'm not where I'd like to be, but I'm getting there. Endeavor uncharacteristically smiled a bit. That's good news, you can go now. My driver will take you to my house for dinner. Izuku got up and bowed before leaving the office. As he was about to close the door. Midoriya, yes sir, Izuku answered, turning back to the pro hero. I'm looking forward to seeing how far you go, Endeavor said with a small trace of a smile. Izuku smiled a little. Thank you, sir. It was a very short interaction, but one that meant a lot to Izuku. Slowly he was improving, and soon he'd master One for All and become just like All Might. No. Better than All Might. They drove off to the Todoroki house, and the driver dropped them off. Shoto rang the doorbell, and a few seconds later 𝗧𝗏 opened the door. "Oh, it's you guys. Come in," he said as they exchanged greetings. He gave Izuku a funny look and looked away. "Hey guys, welcome again," Fuyumi greeted as she entered the room. "Hey Fuyumi," Izuku waved shyly. "Dude, no need to be shy," she whispered to him. Izuku, however, thought otherwise due to the attention he was now getting from his classmates. Shoto raised an eyebrow, and so did Bakugo. "Since when?" Fuyumi sat next to Izuku and nudged him in the ribs. "I'm not a big fan of that," he protested quietly. She giggled in response. "I'm just trying to push your buttons," she whispered back. "You two gonna let us in on that conversation?" 𝗧𝗏 asked. "I'd rather not," Fuyumi replied, cutting off her brother. "Oh, I get it," 𝗧𝗏 said, making a weird face. Fuyumi pinched him in the leg. "Oi, cut it out." Shoto was the most quiet out of all of them, looking at the situation. Midoriya didn't seem to mind his sister's close proximity to him, and it seemed he was used to it. They were also on a first-name basis. A very small, almost unnoticeable smirk crept up his face. Dinner this time was lighthearted, and they talked about various things. Even Bakugo joined in on occasions. Izuku noticed 𝗧𝗏 occasionally gave him a funny look, wondering why, but it made him a bit more nervous. He nearly yelped as he felt a hand on his. Fuyumi had snuck her hand under the table and placed it on his. "This is risky, but oh well," he thought to himself. He didn't mind the subtle flirting, though this time it wasn't so subtle. The two of them continued their thumb war under the table. Surprisingly, no one had seemed to notice. They still had some free time before the driver was back, so they decided on some light training. "I'll join you. We could spar a bit," Fuyumi said. Izuku gave her a funny look, which she pouted to. "Just because I don't want to be a hero doesn't mean I can't fight. I'm Endeavor's daughter, for crying out loud," she said, rolling her eyes. The room was pretty big, though Shoto took to another part of the room, dragging Bakugo with him, his senses tingling with something he couldn't quite explain, but his mind told him to leave those two alone. "Let's get this started then." Izuku's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Her sports bra did little to hide anything that would distract him, and her pants also hugged her figure, leaving him a bit red and bothered. "Hello, Earth," to Izuku. He was snapped back into reality as she waved her hands in front of him. "I spaced out. Sorry." Fuyumi moved back a little and took a stance. Izuku noticed that it was a Muay Thai stance, with him taking a stance of his own. "Heads up, I kick pretty hard," she said with a sweet smile. Oh yeah, it was all coming together for Izuku Midoriya. They had a little session, and true to her words, she kicked pretty hard. At some point, she hit him in the side, completely blowing out the air from his lungs. Imagine she kicked him in the balls. Jesus Christ, that would hurt. "Hey Fuyumi, have you ever wondered how it would feel to fly?" he asked as they were resting on the floor. "Yeah, too bad I can't. It'd be cool if you could though. You'd basically be like Superman," she said with a laugh. Izuku chuckled and seemed to ponder on something for some seconds, then spoke up. "Well, I can't fly per se, but I can float. Don't tell anyone. I'm still not ready to show it off just yet." She turned to him surprised. "You can?" "Yeah, I figured I could a while back," he said, scratching the back of his head. She was now curious and turned to him excitedly. "Can you show me?" He nodded and looked around to see if anyone was around. Shoto and Bakugo were too carried away, so the coast was clear. He took a deep breath and slowly rose from the floor, and she gasped. "You're really floating. How does it feel?" she asked in amazement, watching him spin around in the air for a few seconds before stabilizing himself. Izuku chuckled, then had an idea. "I'm not sure how to explain it. You'd have to feel it yourself," as he said that black tendrils wrapped around her, and she was lifted up into the air. It wasn't too high, but their heads touched the ceiling. "This feels amazing, though my gut isn't a fan," she said as they lazily spun around in the air. Izuku gently lowered them down to the floor, but Fuyumi, not being used to it, lost her balance and fell, dragging him with her. Thud. "Oh, that's gonna leave a bruise." Izuku was staring into Fuyumi's eyes. They fell down, and she fell on top of him. Neither of them said anything, only small breaths. Izuku slowly put a hand on her to move her off him, hoping she hadn't gotten hurt, and feeling bad for letting her fall like that. "Fuyumi, you okay?" he asked, concerned. She was still looking at him, and he was starting to get nervous. The both of them were inches away from each other, and due to the forces of attraction, or some simple story bullshittery, they both drew closer. It wasn't long, but they both widened their eyes, realizing what they had both just done. This made them both turn beet red, and slowly Fuyumi rolled off Izuku, and they just laid there speechless. Izuku spoke up after a few minutes of complete silence. What just happened? Such an ass sometimes. I wanna just smash his. Yumi. You listening? Fuyumi. Huh. What? What? The girl exclaimed, being pulled out of her thoughts by a loud and somewhat irked voice. She gave a sheepish smile towards her friend, who pouted and blew the bang dangling in front of her face. At least try to pretend you're not in that little world of yours, she said with an exasperated sigh. Fuyumi chuckled at her friend's antics and apologized. Sorry, Hana, what were you saying again? She asked with a small chuckle, only hearing a select few words, but knowing her friend, it was probably related to a boy. It's my boyfriend. He's been getting on my nerves lately. He always finds a way to ruin the moment when I want to make a move on him. Like last week, even after all the signals I gave him, they all blew right over his head. Can you imagine? He's so dense. Hana whined. Fuyumi looked at her friend with a bit of amusement, and then blushed slightly at what she had been insinuating. If she had to guess, the guy was completely aware of what she wanted. Come to think of it, she didn't even remember his name. Then another thought hit her. Maybe she was wrong, but guys seem to be way too good at pretending to be oblivious, just like Izuku the first time. Izuku. Not again. She thought as she remembered what happened between them the last time that they last saw each other, the red hue becoming more evident to her friend, who was watching with interest. Mind telling me what's gotten you all lobster mode? It's really embarrassing, Fuyumi admitted, making Hana's eyes gleam with excitement, her mind racing through a plethora of thoughts before landing on her conclusion. Boy problems. Fuyumi entered a serious coughing fit, confirming her suspicions. Spill, girl. I need to know who managed to break past your defenses, Hana said with a squeal and drew closer to her friend. I don't know if you'll be okay with this, Fuyumi said with a somewhat worried look. Hana gave her a look of really? It could be a frog at this point. You've always avoided guys in general, so I'm at least curious, Hana said with a deadpan. Fuyumi looked to her friend, a bit unsure, but trusting her regardless. She leaned in closer and whispered it to her. You what? With a what? Shush. Someone will hear. Fuyumi said in a harsh whisper, putting her hand over her friend's mouth. Hana took some seconds to calm down, then spoke up. Sorry for the reaction. It just caught me off guard is all. But of all people, a high schooler. And a first year at that. It's risky, but oh well, I'm happy for you, Fuyumi. Thank you. Wait, why are you talking like we're official? Hana gave her an incredulous look inside. Fuyumi, you've never been anywhere near a guy that wasn't any of your brothers as far as I know. And if you're out here kissing someone, then that's gotta be a sign. It was an accident, Fuyumi said in embarrassment. Yeah, sure. Though I do hope for more of those accidents in the future, Hana said with a very suggestive facial expression. Hana. Okay, sorry, I was just teasing you, the blue-haired girl said with a giggle. Fuyumi also joined her. This was pretty much a normal conversation between them. She looked at her phone, to the contact that her finger was hovering over. I wonder how he's taking this. XXX. Midoriya? Hello? Gah! The boy jumped startled. Mina sighed and facepalmed, looking down at her previously occupied classmate. You've been out of it all day, class is over. Everyone's heading to the cafeteria, she said, pointing at the rest of their classmates, making their way out of the class to get food. I'll be right there, Ashido, he said, putting his things in order. Mina sighed again and left the classroom. So is he coming? Momo asked as the pink girl came out of the class. Yeah, finally got him out of his little trance, Mina replied, sitting down. Not too long after, Izuku came by with his tray and sat down, but didn't say anything. Did something happen? Momo asked as the boy sat down at the table after getting his food from the counter. He raised an eyebrow in confusion at her question. Do I seem like something's bothering me? You have no idea, the girl said with a sigh. She's right. You're pretty much out of it lately, Tsu pointed out. Very much so. I do hope it doesn't affect your grades, Ida added. Izuku chuckled, surprising them. He made small talk with them, but his mind was in one place, one moment. The kiss, it's not like they could act like it never happened, because it did. Even so, that was exactly what he and Fuyumi were doing. It had already been about 2 weeks since it happened, but the dynamic between them never changed. Their text didn't stop. It wasn't awkward or tense, but he could tell that was on the outside. They both knew what happened and needed to address it, Or at least accept that it happened. Izuku, hey Fuyumi, can we talk? A few minutes passed and no answer. Maybe she was in class. BZZT, or not. Fuyumi, talk about? Izuku, what happened that day? I want to just pretend it never happened. But I can't. He wasn't sure if that was the right call. But he might as well bite the bullet and take the risk. Fuyumi, I guess so. I've been feeling the same way. But I didn't want things to get awkward between us, Izuku. That's a relief. At least we're on the same page, Fuyumi. Let's meet up this weekend. And then we'll talk about it. Sound good? Izuku, yeah, sounds good. Lunch break is over now. I'll talk to you later, Fuyumi. Okay, see you later. He clicked off his phone and slid it into his pocket. Then returned his tray after finishing and headed back to class. At least he got one thing out of the way, now the other. What the hell do I even say? Aizawa walked into the class looking as tired as ever, scanning each of his students before finally speaking up. Good day, students. I've been busy arranging some forms, hence why you haven't seen me today. Take one and pass it to the next person. What are they for, sir? Momo asked as she read through the contents of the paper she had been handed. They are permits. You'll be spending the rest of the week at your work-study agencies. Get them to your parents to sign their consent to this program. Shouldn't be a problem, the man explained. Izuku's breath hitched. That was like 3 or 4 days if you added Sundays. Oh man, he thought to himself. That aside, you'll be having a little test today before you're free to go. A little battle simulation to see how much you've improved since the start of the work-study program, Aizawa said, making the class light up with excitement and anticipation. Heck yeah, it's about damn time. Kirishima exclaimed, excitedly pounding his fists together. Bakugo also had a similar reaction, except that his fists produced small sparks. A while later they were outside at a large mock city, and they were all geared up. Izuku was making a few adjustments to his suit when he heard a familiar voice. Class B is back for vengeance. You won't win like last time, Class A scum. Oh great. Monoma's here, Izuku said with a sigh, with Shoto also agreeing with him. Monoma was probably the only person in the world that even Izuku couldn't stand. The guy would just never shut up. Hey guys, Kendo greeted. There were some light-hearted exchanges between the two classes, of course, with the exception of Monoma. Hello, Midoriya, a soft voice greeted, startling the boy. He turned to see the resident ghost girl of Class 1B, Ryuko Yanagi. Oh, hello Yanagi-san, it's been a while, he greeted back with a smile. You look spookier than before, she pointed out, much to his confusion. Spookier? I don't get it, Izuku said with a nervous chuckle, scratching the back of his head. She means you're way cuter than the last time we saw you, 𝗧𝗪. A familiar voice suddenly said, making the boy jump like a little girl. Gah, you should really stop doing that to me, Takagi-san, he said in a partly annoyed and partly tired voice. She was one of the few people who knew how to get on his nerves. A loud whistle caught their attention. Vlad King and Aizawa stood in front of them. This is a test to see how your work-study experience has paid off in your progress, Aizawa started, but was cut off by the loud voice of his colleague. And it's also a class contest, Vlad King added, that too. Aizawa said with a sigh. Much like last time, they were picked in teams of 4. The goal, incapacitation. First team to disable all members of the other team wins. There will be a harsh penalty for excessive force. We don't want you killing each other, Aizawa explained. The team placements were in. Izuku sighed. Great, just my luck. Class A Izuku Midoriya Hantasiro. Toru Hagakure Shoto Todoroki. Class B Nido Monoma Yui Kodai Juzo Honuki. Setsuna Takagi, damn, Midoriya and Todoroki in the same team. Some of the students exclaimed. It really didn't seem like a fair match, in all honesty. Izuku was a bit relieved and worried. If Monoma was able to copy Shoto's quirk, it would be a huge problem. And there was also Honuki to worry about. It was no mystery what he was capable of. All of their opponents, in fact, were threats. We'll win this, Shoto said, giving a small glare at their opponents. Let's do it, Izuku replied, getting ready. As they got ready, Shiro asked a question. So what are we going to do about Mudman? Midoriya and I can go up. But what about you two? It's simple. I'll just take him out first, Izuku said in a strangely Bakugo-like manner. Way to channel your inner Bakugo. Okay, sounds like a plan, Shiro said with a smirk. Hagakure and I will move ahead. Then she can take cover and pick out anyone who's not on guard, Shoto said. The alarms blared, indicating the start of the match. I wonder how this is going to turn out, Midnight said thoughtfully. It definitely was going to be an interesting battle. Class B was already on the offensive, as planned by Monoma. He had already copied the quirks of his teammates, and he and Honuki immediately went after the grounded ones. Izuku and Shiro took to the air. As I expected, Kodai now, Monoma yelled. A wave of enlarged barrels flew at them at high speeds. They both evaded, and Shiro shot tape at her. A hand came out of nowhere and caught it. No, oh bro, that's not working here, the voice of 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said as an arm came out of nowhere and grabbed the tape. Where's 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏? Shoto shot a huge wave of ice, creating a barrier between them. But Monoma scaled over and softened the ground in an attempt to trap him. Shoto used his flames to shoot himself into the air and landed on a metal pipe. Shiro and Izuku swung around on the pipes. That was until Monoma launched another wave of barrels at them. I'll handle Monoma, you take care of 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, Izuku yelled to Shiro. Shiro immediately shot a flurry of tapes at the floating body parts. Shoto and Honuki were in a heated battle. He could melt the ground, but Shoto could blast flames right through to him. He now had Monoma and Kodai to take care of. He dodged some giant spanners, and then threw an air blast at Kodai, who got sent back. Monoma smirked and his body split into pieces just like 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏. You class of scum haven't been the only ones evolving. Take this. All the parts of Monoma then shattered and each landed on different parts of the battlefield. Shiro, who was mid-swing, was caught off guard as the pipe he was swinging from turned to mush. I'm going down, he yelled to his teammates. Everyone in the vicinity, which was basically the entire field, began to sink into the ground. Izuku jumped with full cowling into the air and Monoma yelled. You don't have anywhere to swing from again. Izuku smirked at him. It was time to surprise everyone. Izuku went up, but didn't come down. All Might's eyes widened in shock. That's Sensei's quirk. But how? When? Midoriya can fly, was the collective yell from the other students. Even Aizawa couldn't help but give an impressed smile. The boy never ceased to amaze him. What? You never told anyone you could fly? Monoma yelled in outrage. This just threw his entire plan out the door. Izuku propelled himself with air force at an unprepared Honuki. One for all, 35% smash. Izuku connected to his jaw, sending him flying into a pile of mush, knocking him out immediately. The effects of his quirk subsided, allowing the others to move around. Shiro quickly taped together 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏's stray parts, and Kodai was frozen solid by Shoto. Monoma yelled, launching a wave of gigantified objects at Izuku. I've had enough of you. Izuku blitzed him faster than he could react, and landed a solid smash right in his guts, rocketing him into the metal pipes behind and effectively winning the battle. Class won a win. The speakers blared, indicating the end of the fight. All right, Kirishima yelled. As the injured were taken care of, Izuku was the center of attention, much to his displeasure, as he really wanted to be left alone. Why didn't you tell us you could fly? Was what everyone kept asking him. He was bombarded by his classmates who were mind-blown. Midoriya, that was a hell of a surprise you had for us. I must say I'm impressed. You've exceeded my expectations, Aizawa said with a satisfied smirk, and patted him on the shoulder. Thank you, Sensei, Izuku said with a smile. All Might put a hand on his shoulder, with a happy, but serious look. I'd like to have a word with you later on. Bakugo grabbed him by the collar. Why the hell did you hide something like this, huh? Sorry, I wanted it to be a surprise, Izuku explained. Don't get the wrong idea. Just because of this, don't think you're better than me. I'm gonna surpass you, and I'll be number 1 inch. I hear you, 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏. Would you let me go, please? He begged. Bakugo let him go with a grunt and walked away to prepare for his own match. Izuku pulled out his phone and saw the messages Fuyumi left. Fuyumi, hello? You dead? Izuku, no, I'm not. We had a little test in school. A battle simulation. Fuyumi, oh cool, so how'd it go? Izuku, our team won actually, and I used my float ability today. It was quite a shock for them. Fuyumi, I can only imagine the shock. Izuku, so we just heard earlier today that we'll be staying at our hero agencies for the rest of the week. Fuyumi, oh, guess we'll have plenty of time to talk then. When are you coming? Izuku, when we're done with whatever Endeavor has in store for us today. Fuyumi, okay, I'll see you then. BTW, Iman needs some matcha, so could you get some for me? Please? Izuku, what flavor? Fuyumi, Sakura. Thanks a bunch. He sighed, and looked up, hearing a very loud boom. A Bakugo boom. Die. Fuyumi was in class, but in all honesty couldn't remember what their teacher had said 5 seconds ago. She had a very hard time listening in on what they were being taught, and found herself once again lost in the memory of that moment. It had been so unexpected, so unlike anything she had ever experienced before. And yet, there was a part of her that couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to feel those lips against hers again. She blushed at the thought, mentally slapping herself for such naughty thoughts. What's wrong with me? But before she could dwell any further on her conflicted emotions, there was a tap on her shoulder, pulling her back to the present. With a sigh, Fuyumi pushed aside her thoughts and turned to the person who had touched her. Hana scanned her friend's facial expression and giggled. What's gotten you so occupied? Is it who I think it is? She asked, wagging her eyebrows. Fuyumi growled a bit at her friend, but couldn't deny it as it would only press her even more. She nodded, unable to find the words to express the tangled mess of emotions swirling inside her. He's coming over for the rest of the week, something that their school suddenly decided, and well, I said we would talk about what happened. But I'm nervous. Hana listened intently, then gave her friend a toothy grin, and then spoke up. I'd like to see that as fate, a golden opportunity. Maybe this is even some crapily convenient story. Fuyumi sighed, but then was surprised when Hana became a little more serious. Seriously though, you can't let this chance slide. Who knows if things will ever fall in place this conveniently. I'm not saying you jump his bone, but at least you guys should at least come to terms with your relationship. Delay may just ruin the little progress you have. Okay, fine. I will do my best. You won't be doing all the work. If he's even close to what I've heard you describe him, he probably has it worse than you, which makes it all too adorable. Two awkward lovebirds, Hana said with a giggle. Fuyumi, despite the scowl she tried to put on, giggled at her friend's antics. It was encouraging to see that her best friend was fully supporting her, even if she was a bit too invested in it. But Hana was right. They had to sort themselves out. And with Shoto, Izuku, and Bakugo coming over for the weekend to continue their work-study program with their father, 𝗵𝗲𝗏, Fuyumi knew that the time for honesty had finally come. We'll see when the time comes, she said with a distant look. Indeed, time would tell what would become of their relationship. XXX. The three boys, Shoto, Izuku, and Bakugo, stood behind 𝗵𝗲𝗏 at the front of his hero agency. Today, I'll be moving even more. You three are capable enough to keep up with me, and that's a fact. Who knows? Maybe you'll take down a villain before I do. The three of them smirked, too proud of themselves that they gained the acknowledgement of the #1 hero. As they expected, he blasted off, with them in hot pursuit. Those three kids are amazing, Vernon said to another sidekick. It was like a race. They would come very close, but 𝗵𝗲𝗏 would just get there before them. Izuku finally pulled out his trump card, Float, surprising 𝗵𝗲𝗏, and he managed to nab a villain with Black Whip. Excellent, Midoriya, and your new ability as well. I'm impressed you got to him before me. Bakugo and Shoto, seeing this, mentally steeled themselves to get stronger too. Izuku wasn't going to leave them behind. It took a while, but at least each of them managed to beat 𝗵𝗏𝗏 in a capture race. Again, I'll say, excellent work today. No other sidekick has managed to do what you three students have. Keep up the good work. That's all for today. Get your things ready and my driver will take it from there, he said, walking into his office. Shoto followed him into the room. Shoto. He was a bit surprised, since the boy generally refused to see him alone. I never wanted to come here. I was forced to, but I want to believe I made the right choice. I made mistakes. You did too. What you did to Mom will never change, but thank you for making me stronger. I'm still angry, but I don't hate you anymore. That's all I had to say. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 looked at his son, leaving the room with a sad expression. He really messed up, and honestly didn't want to be forgiven. He wanted to be hated. At least he'd get to pay for his actions. Shoto. Izuku smiled as Shoto walked out, his face showing some turmoil. He remembered their conversation, when said boy brought it up some time ago. Flashback. Izuku sat across Shoto in his room, both looking tense. Shoto's face showed a bit of anger. Look, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, and it's none of my business to meddle in your family affairs. I also would never understand how you feel. But if you want to move on in life, you have to let some things go. Shoto's eyes hardened. And just forget everything he did. Izuku sighed and glared at him seriously, which was very uncharacteristic of him. He did bad things that will never change, but it's clear as day he's trying to repent for his wrongdoings. I don't know why you deemed me fit to be included in such a sensitive matter, but here's my piece. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 isn't the same as before, and I understand it's hard. But as I said before, you have to let some things go, not for his sake, but for yours. As long as you have this grudge, you'll never grow stronger. And like it or not, he's the only one who can get you to where you want to go. You said it at the sports festival. I have All Might in my corner. Kacchin has best gymnast. If you don't have a mentor, you'll fall behind. That's the hard truth. Shoto listened in silence. Izuku had never been this straightforward or blunt about something, and there was truth in what he was saying. Do you know why I've never mentioned my dad? Izuku suddenly asked. Come to think of it, Izuku had never said anything about his father before. No, I just thought you never brought it up, he responded. Kacchan has an idea of what happened. My dad left. He left me and my mom behind, after I was born. I never even got to see him. And growing up the way I did, I needed a father figure, but I had none. Kacchan's dad was the closest to one, but he too was always busy. I always asked my mom where my dad was, or I had one. She would just give me a sad smile and tell me it was going to be all right. At some point I stopped asking. I hated him when I found out what happened, but it was a burden. I may not have gone through what you did, but I know what it feels like to hate someone. I may just be selfish here, but I don't want you to throw away something that I never got the chance to have. Izuku got up and left him with those words. Flashback and Shoto gave him a nod. He was going to try, as hard as it was going to be. The driver pulled up and called them. Excuse me, sir. Could we please stop at a convenience store? Izuku asked. The man agreed, and they drove off. The closer they got to the Todoroki house, the more nervous Izuku got. 3 days. They were dropped off and met Fuyumi outside. She greeted them, and they went inside. By the way, I got you the matcha, Izuku said, handing her 2 packs of the sweet stuff, watching the girl light up at the sight of the sweets. Thanks a bunch, Izu. Oh, it's so good, she squealed. Why, yeah, you're welcome, he said with a small chuckle. Natsuo wasn't home, so Fuyumi gave them a tour and showed them their rooms. She did hide it, but she noticed Izuku was giving her curious looks every now and then, and she was doing the same. Bakugo eventually just went to the training room to get some light training in, at least by his standards. Shoto was also busy doing something, leaving them both to themselves. Izuku was a bit tense, though not entirely because of the Fuyumi situation, but also the fact that he was in another person's house for the first time in such a long time. They had dinner, with Endeavor actually making it this time. However, Fuyumi was surprised when Shoto tried conversing with their dad. At least he tried to. She smiled at his effort. Dinner was relatively normal, even when Natsuo eventually joined them. Later that night, Izuku went into the training room. He did what he usually did, and someone for all training as well. Float wasn't exactly where he wanted it to be. He just let himself go and began floating around aimlessly, thinking about what he should say, or how he should bring it up. He was sure of one thing though. He wasn't exactly ready for something like that. But again, neither was he when he received one for all, so that's that. A part of him wished she would bring it up first. He shook his head while steadying himself. He had to be the one. And he had to do it as soon as he could, because he didn't want the time he could use to learn something new be spent trying to fight his thoughts. After about 30 minutes of floating, his body had enough, and he slowly descended. He sighed. He was getting better at hovering in a single spot, but there was still room for improvement. Maybe he would ask Uraraka to help him out with that. So you're here, figures, a familiar voice said. He felt Fuyumi's back against his. What are you doing? He asked. Nothing. This was just on a whim, she said with a chuckle. But in reality, she just couldn't look him in the eye, especially with what she was about to bring up. Izuku chuckled too, and could tell that wasn't the complete truth, but he was not going to say anything. They both fell silent. A few minutes passed and neither said anything. Listen, I'm sorry for what happened. It's because I didn't drop you carefully, so yeah, sorry, Izuku apologized. Fuyumi was silent for some time, but she spoke up eventually. You don't need to apologize. I was the one who started it. I should have controlled myself, but I just did it out of nowhere. Izuku looked down. I didn't mind that. I actually. Never mind, he said in a low voice. Fuyumi heard him and felt a bit happier. She too liked that feeling, if she was going to be honest. The feeling's mutual, Izuku, she said, placing her hands behind her next to his. I have never done this before, so I don't know what to do, Izuku said with a nervous laugh. Same here, Izuku made a sound of surprise. Why do you sound so surprised? Well, you're beautiful, Fuyumi. I thought that you'd at least know how this 𝗬𝗍 worked, Izuku admitted shyly, and the surprise still evident in his voice. Fuyumi had a small laugh. You thought wrong. No one's ever approached me, maybe because of my dad, or maybe I'm simply not what they're looking for. It feels lonely at times. That's why I don't want my family breaking apart. I'll be alone, she admitted. They both had another round of silence. Izuku mustered up his courage and did something he didn't think he had the balls to do. He slowly put his hand on top of Fuyumi's and relaxed, seeing she had no negative reaction. Man, he was probably using up his lifetime supply of good luck. But if it was for this, then he didn't mind. You? aren't alone, Fuyumi. You have your brothers, your dad, even your mom. It's not my place to say anything, but they all love you in their own way. And I'm here too. If you'll let me be there for you, Izuku said, looking down, mentally screaming as he thought it sounded cheesy, like a line you'd read from a rom-com manga or something. When I'm sad? She asked. Yes, happy? Yes, when I'm angry? Yes, hungry? Fuyumi? They both laughed at his answer. Fuyumi found her fingers locking with his, but neither said anything to address it. Their backs were still pressed against each other, but they didn't move. It felt nice, and looking at the position their hands were in, it didn't leave too much to imagine. Izuku, can we do it again? Izuku yawned and got up, popping a few joints here and there, groaning in satisfaction. He looked around, remembering that he was still in Endeavor's house. It had been quite an eventful 2 days, to which he still thought it was a dream. A good one that he didn't want to wake up from. He and Fuyumi weren't official, but then again they hadn't acted like that was the case. Both were new to the experience. Today's the last day, he said to himself. He slipped out of the bed and went to the bathroom, took a light shower, brushed his teeth, and headed out for his morning routine. He heard sounds coming from that direction, and guessed that either Bakugo or Shoto was already awake. Good morning, Izuku, Fuyumi greeted as he stepped out. Izuku smiled, though with a tint of red. Morning, Fuyumi. Did you sleep well? Yup. Where are you headed so early? She asked, as no one she knew of was awake yet. I wanted to have a light training session, that's all, he said with a sheepish chuckle, and scratched the back of his head. Fuyumi nodded, though she was a bit surprised that he was the first one awake. Normally it was their dad. Come to think of it, she hadn't seen him since yesterday. She smiled at the green-haired boy. Oh, okay, don't tire yourself out before breakfast, K. I'll try not to, Izuku replied. Fuyumi surprised him by giving him a small kiss on the cheek and walked away, leaving the boy's face as red as Endeavor's hair. He was flustered, but couldn't suppress the stupid grin he had on his face. Unexpected, but nice, he thought to himself. He slid open the door, expecting to see Bakugo or Shoto, but instead it was Endeavor himself. He gulped as he felt the heat in the room, and that the man had noticed his presence. Gee, good morning, sir. Sorry for intruding, he squeaked out. He was about to close the door, but Endeavor stopped him. Midoriya, please come in. I'd like to have a word with you. Izuku closed the door behind him and sat in front of the man, absolutely a nervous wreck, especially as he was now in cahoots with said man's daughter. Endeavor was quiet for a few moments, then spoke up in a surprisingly low tone. This isn't about any hero-related matter. Actually, I've been wanting to talk to you ever since the sports festival. About what, sir? Izuku asked, going through a plethora of possible topics, but stopped as his mind was not producing anything feasible. Thank you for helping Shoto to accept his power. I was an ass to you when we first met, and I apologize for that. You have helped me in ways that you couldn't understand, especially when it comes to my family. The change has been something that I never expected or wanted, but it is because of you. And for that you have my gratitude. Please, sir. There's no need for all this, and I don't think I'm important enough to be involved in your family affairs, Izuku protested, thinking to himself that he was not worthy of such good words. To him, in fact, he stuck his nose where it didn't belong. Regardless of such, I still feel I need to thank you, Shoto, and even Fuyumi seem happier because of you. I may not look the part, but I care about my children. It took me a while to get it, but I did, and I regret everything I did wrong to them and their mother. It's weird that I feel comfortable to talk to you like this, but you're a good kid, and you're also determined. I'm honored to have taught you, Endeavor said with a smile. Thank you as well for the kind words, sir. It means a lot, Izuku said with a bow. Endeavor then took a more curious tone and asked a question that Izuku was not prepared to answer. That aside, would you mind telling me what's going on between you and Fuyumi? Izuku froze in his position, his heart going cold. How did you? He stuttered out in shock. Endeavor chuckled to himself, finding the boy's reaction amusing to him. I'm a pro hero. Deduction is a basic skill I must have. And I also had my suspicions. You just confirmed them. You're already on a first-name basis, and you two aren't really the most tactful when you're stealing glances at each other, Endeavor said, feeling slightly amused at the way the boy seemed to shrink with each passing word. Izuku groaned. They were found out so quickly. I haven't seen Fuyumi comfortable with anyone that isn't a family member before. Although it's not ideal, I won't interfere in your relationship, but I will set ground rules. First and foremost, the both of you will keep this between yourselves alone. I guess you know what would happen if your school were to find out about your extracurricular activities, or worse, the media. It'd be a lot of hell for you, and everyone involved in this. Also, don't let this hinder the progress you have made. I want to see you only improve from here, and I will not tolerate you slacking off. Are my terms fair enough? Why, yes, sir, Izuku answered nervously. I'm glad we're on the same page. Now then, how about a little spar? Endeavor asked, getting up. I'd be glad to, sir. Endeavor had a thought flash through his mind. I see why All Might likes so much. Shoto and Bakugo soon came in to see them sparring, both immediately regretting sleeping in and letting Izuku get the jump on them. They two of them took notice of their presence and stopped. Glad you could make it. Midoriya and I were having a little sparring session. Would you like to join us? Endeavor asked. Spar with the number one. Hell yeah, I'm in, Bakugo said, pounding his fists together. Shoto agreed, but in a more quiet manner. Izuku stepped back to catch his breath, letting Bakugo take over. They spent some time training before heading back and taking baths, then coming back for breakfast. As usual, Fuyumi sat next to Izuku, but this time he didn't show any signs of nervousness at all. Shoto kept glancing over to them, trying to figure out how and why they became such good friends so soon. Natsuo, however, could tell right away, but didn't say anything. During the course of breakfast, she slipped her hand under the table and grabbed his, but he didn't mind. It was something he was starting to get used to hand-holding. It seemed so innocent, so pure, yet was the gateway to all things unholy. He shook his mind of such thoughts. It was pretty much the last day, so he'd get to enjoy the benefits of a secret romance while he could. You guys can come over whenever you like. I'm sure our dad won't mind. He seems to have taken a liking to you, Natsuo said as he left the house. The driver was already there. Shoto and Bakugo pulled their stuff towards the car. I'll be going now. I'll text you as soon as I get to school, Izuku said. Fuyumi smiled and hugged him, though they weren't seen by anyone. Then they both leaned in and kissed softly. Bye, Izuku, she said with a warm smile. A blushing, happy Izuku dragged his stuff into the car and set off for school. What took you so long in there? Bakugo asked. I forgot something, Izuku lied. Shoto gave him a curious look, but didn't say anything. He was starting to put everything together. The way they casually used each other's first names, how free Fuyumi seemed to be around him, and vice versa. And he could have sworn he'd seen them holding hands under the table one time. But that may have been his mind playing tricks on him. Izuku and his sister. It made him chuckle to himself. It was outlandish to think about, but scarily enough it was all too possible. They got to the dorms and unpacked. Since they were free for the rest of the day, they really didn't do much. Bakugo went to sleep, leaving Izuku and Shoto to themselves. Izuku could tell Shoto was thinking about something. Izuku, he called out. Yes? He answered nervously. Are you dating my sister? Shoto asked with a raised eyebrow. Izuku facepalmed mentally. What was with this family and their weirdly accurate sense of perception? What gave you that idea? Izuku asked, feigning surprise. He didn't want another round of questioning, and also it was part of his agreement with Endeavor. I guess I'm jumping the gun there, Shoto said with a small laugh. He dropped it, but something told him otherwise. Either way, it wasn't his business. Well, technically, it was since his sister was involved. The rest of the class returned little by little, until every one of them was back at the dorms. Most were relieved that they were back at the dorms. The work-study special program had pushed them to the absolute limit, and Aizawa didn't let up on handing them assignments, even while knowing what they were going though. Man, I missed you guys, Mina cried. Aizawa-sensei is such a slave driver, sending us homework on a work-study, Toru added, stretching lazily. They all had a laugh at their antics, and at last they could kick back at least until Monday. XXX, the sterile scent of the hospital room hung heavy in the air, as Fuyumi Todoroki sat by her mother Rei's bedside. The older woman was sitting up and staring out the window, before turning back to her daughter, and something was different about her. Rei Todoroki's soft gaze swept over her daughter, noticing the subtle changes in her demeanor. There was a lightness in Fuyumi's eyes, a warmth in her smile that hadn't been there before. Concern mingled with curiosity as Rei spoke softly, her voice weakened by illness. Fuyumi dear, you seem happier lately. Something good happened recently, I presume. Fuyumi hesitated for a moment, her fingers fiddling nervously with the edge of her sweater. She hadn't intended to let her personal life slip into the conversation, but her mother's perceptive gaze seemed to pierce through any facade she attempted to maintain. I suppose I've just been trying to focus on the positive things in my life, she replied, offering a tentative smile. Ray studied her daughter for a moment, a knowing glint in her eyes. "You sure it's not something else? I can think of a few things," she said with a small smirk, and watched in amusement as Fuyumi shrunk even further under her gaze. Fuyumi's cheeks flushed slightly at her mother's inquiry, but she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over her. Perhaps it was time to confide in her mother, to share the joy she had found in unexpected places. "Well, Mom, something did happen. Something that made me feel happy," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ray's lips curved into a tender smile, a flicker of amusement dancing in her eyes. "Oh, and who might this lucky person be?" she inquired, her tone laced with gentle teasing. Fuyumi suddenly jerked at her mother's tone. "Mom!" Ray giggled to herself. "I was just teasing you, though I have a feeling you'll soon come clean. But for now I'll let you be," Fuyumi sighed in relief. Her mother knew how to get the right reactions out of her, but there was truth in what she said. She would have to tell her eventually, though from her tone, she should already have an idea on what her situation could be. It was the same with her dad and 𝗬𝗏. Maybe they all had some special senses or something. Ray put a hand on hers and spoke up again. "I just hope whatever it is, it keeps you happy." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the soft hum of the medical equipment surrounding Ray's bed. Fuyumi found solace in her mother's presence, grateful for the opportunity to share her feelings without fear of judgment. After a moment, Ray's curiosity got the better of her as she turned her attention back to Fuyumi. "How is your father doing?" she asked suddenly, making Fuyumi to raise an eyebrow in surprise. "Why are you asking?" Ray smiled at her, then looked behind her, pointing at a jar of beautiful electric blue flowers. "He has been coming over for a while now, and I can tell he is going through a lot. We are coming to terms with what happened, and I think we should all move on from it." "Wait, does that mean you?" "Yes, though I already forgave him a long time ago. He just has to forgive himself," Ray responded with a soft voice. A fond smile tugged at the corners of Fuyumi's lips as she began to speak, her eyes alight with affection. "I really don't know what to say, Mom." Ray listened intently, a sense of warmth blooming in her chest as she listened to Fuyumi. It was a well-needed step in salvaging what remained of their broken family. She slowly pulled her into a hug. Fuyumi leaned into her mother's touch, feeling a sense of warmth and acceptance wash over her. In that moment, surrounded by the beeping of machines and the antiseptic scent of the hospital, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As they sat together in quiet companionship, mother and daughter found solace in each other's presence. And amidst the hardships and trials they faced, they found comfort in the knowledge that love, in all its forms, had the power to heal even the deepest of wounds. Later that night, 𝗵𝗃 pulled his phone from his pocket. "Fuyumi, are you free right now?" "𝗧𝗑, I guess so." "Fuyumi, you're alone?" "𝗧𝗑, nope, I have my classmates here with me." "Fuyumi, go to your room." "𝗧𝗑, seriously?" "Fuyumi, seriously, can't have everyone seeing me, right?" "𝗧𝗑, you have a point." He chuckled and got up. "Yo Midoriya, where are you going?" Kirishima asked. "I have a bit of a headache, so I'll be resting for a while." "Okay man," the red-haired boy said with a slightly confused look. It was an obvious lie, but for his girlfriend, he'd do a lot more than a simple lie. He closed his door and turned on his phone, accepting a call, and Fuyumi's face popped on the screen. "So what did you want to talk about?" The weather in Japan had started to get colder. They were approaching the end of the year and would soon be celebrating Christmas, then moving into their second year at UA. But first, "We got the final exams to worry about," 𝗧𝗑 said with a sigh. It completely skipped his mind, understandably so. "The past few weeks have been pretty crazy." "Agreed. We will have to study hard in order to pass comfortably," Ida added. Mina deflated at the mention of the word study. It sent shivers down her spine. She wanted to prepare for the holidays, not be cooped up in front of some textbook. "Ugh, I hate studying," she protested. "Well, it's either that, or you get held back a year. That wouldn't be much fun now, would it?" Momo cut in. Mina still whined about it, until Minta spoke. "Just think of all the things I can make you do as your senior." "Let's study," Mina suddenly said with a serious tone, gaining determination to blow through the exams. Momo mouthed a thank you to the great boy, who snickered and walked away. As with most tests, they formed study groups. Students like Momo, and even Bakugo, volunteered to help out. 𝗧𝗑, however, preferred to study on his own. Not that he didn't find it enjoyable to be with the others, but it could get pretty rowdy, and it always did. He got up and left to All Might's office. They still had their talk about One for All. He knocked on the door and heard come in, "Ah, it's good to see you again." Young Midoriya Izuku took a seat across his teacher. "So, you probably want an explanation about the whole float vestiges talking thing, right?" he started. "Well, yeah, how long have you kept it a secret?" Izuku laughed sheepishly. "Sorry about that. It was when I unlocked float about a month ago. I came into contact with Nana, and I found out that the vestiges in One for All are alive." All Might also chuckled at this. "I can only imagine having 7 people in your head." "Well, yeah, they're quite chatty too," Izuku said, laughing, then winced. "That's a new for me. So what else can you do?" All Might asked. "Right now I'm working on the 4th quirk, Danger Sense. It was pretty taxing, but I finally got the hang of it. Though I'm not yet where I want to be," Izuku said. "And your overall usage of One for All has greatly improved. I'd have to give credit to Endeavor. He's a much better teacher than he comes across," as All Might said with a smile. "He has really helped out, especially in the mental aspect. I think I'm more confident in my abilities as a hero now," Izuku said, looking at his hands, proud of how far he had come. The kid who could only take 1 shot and would destroy half his body to this. "Dare I say you now got some balls on you. That's a great step forward, letting go of your mental shackles. I think that's the main reason your quirk usage has improved far beyond what you've ever been able to accomplish so far," All Might added. Izuku nodded in agreement. His mentality was the biggest improvement. Now he felt he could push, and he knew he was strong. "So I'll ask you this question again, young Midoriya. Do you still want to be a hero like me?" All Might asked. Izuku looked at him with determination. "No, I'll be better," All Might smiled in contentment. That's a much better answer. He was truly happy that the boy had let go of his idolation of All Might. It was good to look up to someone, but to put him on an unreachable pedestal was a wrong mindset to have. Izuku was now on the right track, both physically and mentally on his way to becoming the world's greatest hero. The students of One prepared themselves as best they could for the final exams, knowing that Yua never pulled their punches when it came to such stuff. Soon enough the day rolled in, everyone determined to move up a year, some relishing the prospect of becoming seniors. Izuku wasn't too worried about it. Not to brag, but he was on the smarter end of the student roster in his class. The first test was math, a subject dreaded by most and hated by all to an extent. "Let's get this over with," he thought to himself. That was how it went that entire week. Izuku didn't have any time to talk to Fuyumi much, as she too was in the middle of her final year exam. At last they finished, and the very next day the results were out. "I made it," Mina cried in joy. They were all moving up a year. Izuku smiled, satisfied with his results. He was placed second, just behind Momo. "Looks like you retained your spot," Shoto said as he looked at his. He got 4th place. Standings didn't actually matter. It was just a little competition they had going on. "BZZT, Fuyumi. Hey Izu, sorry I haven't been able to talk for a while. We just finished our final exams yesterday. And well, I've been pretty tired, Izuku." "It's no problem. I was also busy. We'll soon be going home for the holidays, so it's been a little chaotic." "Fuyumi. I know, right? It's so exhausting, Izuku. So, how's your mom doing?" "You don't have to answer if you don't want to, Fuyumi. It's no problem, and thanks for the concern. She's fine now. The doctors just want her to stay for a while longer. Also, my dad's been visiting her frequently. He's still pretty out of it. But they're on talking terms now." "Izuku, that's good to hear. If you feel like talking about anything, I'd be happy to hear, Fuyumi." "I know, though this would have sounded way better in person, Izuku." Agreed. Izuku threw his bag in the corner and flopped onto his bed. It was a bit surreal to him. He was now technically a second-year student. This year had been one crazy ride for him. From a quirkless loser who had no one, then he met All Might. He gained One for All, got into Yua, made friends for the first time in a long time. All the trials and tribulations he went through, all the broken bones and torn muscles along the way. He finally made peace with Kacchan. And then the most astonishing, he got a girlfriend. Now that was something that if you told him a few years back, he'd think you were mocking him. "What a year," he snickered. They were not prepared for what would happen next. XXX Japan was in a state of destruction and chaos. Society had been turned upside down by the just concluded wide-scale attack by the League of Villains on not only the heroes, but everyone in the country. Thousands of lives lost, millions in terms of property damage, and the supposed victory of the villains. Shigaraki got what he wanted. The heroes were blamed for everything, and the people lost their hope in them. Heroes who did not have the will to carry on soon enough turned in resignation letters and left. Even students were not left out of the destruction, as many were injured, some more than others. Bakugo had been in critical condition for a while after being stabbed in the stomach, but was now in the clear. Shoto had been severely burned, both physically and emotionally, as the renowned villain known as 𝗬𝗲𝗍 turned out to be his older brother Fuyumi Todoroki. Needless to say, his family were now under major scrutiny, especially 𝗵𝗲𝗏, who got the worst of it. He was absolutely crushed, and wanted nothing more than to die in his anguish and shame. It broke the man more than anything had ever done before, and he was put in a grave condition. The press and the media, however, showed no mercy, openly criticizing not only him, but the entirety of hero society. The Todoroki family were in despair, each of them reliving the day 𝗬𝗧 returned in a way unbecoming of a hero's son. While this would have completely shattered the family, there was still hope for rebuilding. They could all see that 𝗵𝗲𝗏 was the most affected by this. He now looked a defeated man. Shoto was also badly injured, but he pushed through to see that his father wouldn't suffer alone. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 did wrong, but in his eyes he had more than repaid for that. He wanted to forget everything that happened in the past, to let it all go. Because without their father, there was no hope of stopping 𝗬𝗧𝗏. Rei, their mother, also took a surprising stance in this matter, as she didn't want to see her husband suffer so much. She had long since forgiven him, and wanted back her family. Fuyumi also didn't have it easy. She not only had her father and 𝗬𝗧𝗏 to worry about, but also Izuku, who went into a coma after fighting off Shigaraki. It was quite a dilemma. Her father on the verge of mental breakdown, her older brother a deranged villain, and her boyfriend in coma. Her mother comforted her, knowing how much she cared about Izuku. Rei, who was now aware of Izuku, looked sadly at her children. She could see his impact in the lives of Fuyumi and Shoto, and prayed that he would wake up. It had been 2 weeks, and he hadn't shown any signs of movement. Society had lost their faith in the heroes almost completely, and the peace that All Might once fought for was crumbling rapidly. There was also the problem of one for all. The truth had begun to spread, and people found out the villains were after someone in particular. "It's all my fault. I'm a failure of a hero, a father, and a man," 𝗵𝗏𝗏 said in a hollow voice. Rei put a hand on his and squeezed it reassuringly. "Listen, Inji, I know it's hard, but you have to pull through. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 needs to be stopped. Without you, it's impossible. And you're also the hero who should step up at a time like this. You're number one for a reason." 𝗵𝗏𝗏 scoffed at the thought of calling himself a hero. He was a monster. "Some hero I am. I was too weak. And if Midoriya wasn't there, everyone would have died. Now he's in a coma because the number one hero was too weak to fight Shigaraki. And the fact that 𝗬𝗧𝗏 turned out like this. It's all on me. I was terrible. I don't deserve any pity or forgiveness. I deserve every bit of suffering that comes my way. He was my student, and I was responsible for his safety." Rei smiled sadly, seeing him in such a vulnerable state of mind. "Remember, Inji, you're the father here. If you don't act, who will? Please, we'll all do this as a family. Then we'll rebuild from there. I know you may never drop your guilt, but you can take a step in the right direction. It doesn't have to end like this," she said. "Mom's right. It's not ideal, but we can salvage this. Man up and fix your mess. The 𝗵𝗏𝗏 I know wouldn't be crying on his ass when there's a crisis." Natsuo spoke up. "Natsuo, we're in some deep shit, especially you. But that's why we're a family, right? Dysfunctional as we are, we'll get through this, all of us. So are you in?" 𝗵𝗏𝗏 looked baffled at the hope Natsuo held in his eyes, the certainty in his voice. Shoto added, although in a croaky voice. "Yeah, as Mom said, if you don't help us, there's no way we'll solve this problem. This family has already gone through a lot of shit. The last thing we want is for you to break down now." They were all surprised at his choice of words, as Shoto had never openly sweared before, but it was understandable. "I promise you all, I will do whatever it takes to fix all this." As the family came to terms with their situation, another was in distress. Inko was paranoid, fearful that her son would never wake up from his coma. "Please don't say things like that, Mrs. Midoriya. He's a strong kid. I believe he'll fight through," All Might said, assuring her. "But it's been 2 whole weeks. I know I'm not supposed to think like this, but I can't help it," she said, sniffling. The door opened and Fuyumi peeped in. "How is he?" she asked. They both lowered their heads. "He's still not shown any signs of waking up," All Might responded in a low voice. But he then looked up curiously. "She was 𝗵𝗏𝗏's daughter, right? I'm guessing you know young Midoriya," All Might queried. Fuyumi nodded and noticed Inko as well. "You must be Izuku's mother. I'm Fuyumi Todoroki. It's nice to meet the both of you," she said with a small bow. Both Inko and All Might took notice of her using his first name. It certainly was the first time they heard someone refer to him like that. All Might raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Are you a friend of his? 𝐭𝐽 asked. Well, actually, I'm his girlfriend, Fuyumi said nervously, not sure of how they'd react. Silence. Eh? Both of them yelled in unison. 𝐭𝐽 was in complete shock. I'm guessing from your reaction that he didn't tell you. It's fine. I'm just surprised. So am I. Wait. That's it, 𝐒𝐽𝐵 said with a snap of the finger. That's what? Both females asked. 𝐒𝐽𝐵 smiled. The reason young Midoriya grew so exponentially all of a sudden. It was you. Fuyumi had a small blush at his comment. I wouldn't say that, but it's the truth. You were the push he needed. I'm happy for the two of you, in all honesty, he said sincerely. 𝐭𝐽 also agreed with him. You don't mind? That I'm, older? Fuyumi asked, confused at how accepting 𝐭𝐽 was. It's not my business anyways. Plus, if Izuku likes you, then I'm happy with that. As they say, age is just a number in most cases at least. I'd still like to thank you for checking up on him, even with what's going on with you. It must be hard, and I'm glad Izuku has someone like you. Fuyumi smiled and bowed to them. I'll be taking my leave now. I will come to see him as soon as I can. She's a nice girl, 𝐒𝐽𝐵 said as she left the room. It's still surprising that Izuku would have a girlfriend, 𝐭𝐽 admitted. Izuku was never one to look at girls, let alone harbor the thought of a relationship. Another person that was worried was Katsuki Bakugo, both for Izuku and Shoto. As much as he hated to admit it, they were both his friends and rivals. He was glad Shoto wasn't too injured, but Izuku was a different story altogether. He had woken up only to hear that the nerd had entered a coma. That nerd. If he dies, I'll kill him. A few days passed again, with Fuyumi visiting occasionally, though there was no progress. One day, however, Izuku suddenly woke up with a jolt, startling the nurse who was there to check his vitals. Where am I? Why is it so bright? He asked as his eyes were still in shock from the bright light. The nurse scampered to get the doctor, and not long after his mother, and later 𝐼𝐽𝐵 came rushing into his room. 𝐭𝐽 cried her eyes out, begging him never to scare her like that ever again. 𝐼𝐽𝐵 was happy and relieved that Izuku was now awake, but with his awakening came something else they weren't expecting. The more Izuku explained it to them, the more confused they became. You're saying you want to go after all for one? Izuku nodded. I have to. Right now he's weakened. And if I can find him, then the heroes have a chance. 𝐼𝐽𝐵 looked down. What if that's what he's after? To isolate you. Listen to 𝐼𝐽𝐵, Izuku. This is crazy. You can't go. I won't allow it. 𝐭𝐽 said with tears in her eyes. He just woke up, and he was already thinking of putting himself in danger again. The truth about One for All is no longer a secret. I can't sit here and let All for One do whatever he wants with the lives of innocent people. And he's hurt people dear to me. My friends are all affected one way or the other because of him. And I can't let him do as he pleases anymore. No more of this. Please, Mom. I promise you I'll be careful, he said, hugging his mother. Please be careful, Izuku, 𝐭𝐽 said, giving in to her son's demand. Also, I know this maybe sounds strange, but please don't tell anyone I'm awake. They both looked at him surprised. I know. But if they know, then I can't do what I plan to do. I just hope you know what you're doing, young Midoriya, 𝐼𝐽𝐵 said worriedly. Izuku reassured them. I don't want innocent people getting hurt because I'm around. They both reluctantly agreed to let him go. And Izuku did just that. Class 1 were in the dorms, when Minter ran in holding a letter. Guys, I found a letter. It's Midoriya. They all rushed to him, as they saw the contents of the letter. Dear classmates, I wrote you this letter to tell you that I'm awake, and I'm fine. Also to tell you about a secret I've been keeping for a long time. My quirk was given to me by 𝐼𝐽𝐵, and All for One and Shigaraki are after me. As I can't put any of you in the crossfire, I have decided that I'm leaving you. Please take care, Izuku. Midoriya. The hell? Bakugo yelled in outrage. Why would he make such a decision? Shoto looked at the note with serious eyes. He did have an idea as to why, but still. I don't know, but we'll bring him back. An entire week had passed since Izuku left, and his classmates were saddened by his departure. On another note, Fuyumi was both sad and pissed, not only because of his stupid decision, but that he didn't tell her he was awake. Stupid Izuku, she whispered to herself, worried for his safety. An entire week had passed after his departure, and even if they wanted to find him, they just couldn't. Izuku had completely disappeared, leaving only a trail of terrified civilians and prisoners tied up and left for the police. In an alleyway, a man was hanging dangerously off the side of a building, trembling and struggling to get free. A figure was seen standing over him, emerald green eyes glowing menacingly through the mask he was wearing. "You'll start talking now. Where is 𝐴ll_1?" Izuku's departure sent ripples of uncertainty through the student body. Questions hung in the air, unspoken and unanswered. Where was he going? What did he hope to achieve? And perhaps most importantly, would he even return? Perhaps not, as he was on a mission, one that drove him to the point of obsession with 𝐴ll_1. He wasn't planning on coming back until he had captured the villain. As days turned into an entire 2 weeks, it became clear that Izuku had no intention of coming back. His classmates searched for him tirelessly, combing the streets in search of any trace of their missing friend. But Izuku was elusive, a shadow in the night, his presence felt but never seen. Not even the police had any ideas of his whereabouts. Meanwhile, Izuku's hunt for 𝐴ll_1 and Shigaraki consumed him entirely. Gone were the days of cautious planning and strategic maneuvers. In their place stood a hero driven by desperation and rage, willing to do whatever it took to bring his enemies to justice. Interrogation became his specialty, his methods growing increasingly aggressive and relentless. No villain was safe from his wrath, as Izuku extracted information with a ferocity that bordered on madness. Gone were the gentle persuasions of the past, replaced by a relentless onslaught of threats and intimidation. His classmates watched with growing concern as Izuku's tactics became more and more extreme. With each convict that was found, they could see the toll it was taking on him, the darkness that threatened to consume him from within. But still, they refused to give up on him, clinging to the hope that they could bring him back from the brink. Their journey was not an easy one. Convincing the school authorities to let them leave the safety of UA was a lengthy and arduous process, one fraught with obstacles and setbacks. But they refused to be deterred, their determination unwavering as they pleaded their case. "We can't just sit here and do nothing," Uraraka declared, her voice echoing with conviction. "Izuku needs us, now more than ever. We have to find him." Her classmates nodded in agreement, their resolve mirrored in the determined set of their jaws. They had faced countless challenges together, overcome insurmountable odds. And now, they would face their greatest challenge yet, bringing their friend home. It took another entire week of negotiations, but eventually, their persistence paid off. The school authorities relented, granting them permission to venture into the neighboring cities in search of their missing comrade. With a mixture of hope and apprehension, Izuku's classmates set out on their mission, determined to bring him back to the place where he belonged. Their journey was fraught with danger at every turn, as they navigated the treacherous streets of a broken society in search of any clue that might lead them to Izuku. But they refused to be deterred, their determination unwavering as they pressed on, fueled by the unwavering bond of friendship that bound them together. Izuku had a heavy burden on his shoulders, with one for all, and everything that was related to that matter. And as they faced the challenges that lay ahead, they knew that as long as they stood united, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. For Izuku Midoriya was more than just a classmate. He was a friend, a hero, and a beacon of hope in a world consumed by darkness. And they would not rest until he was safely by their side once more. XXX2 students from Ketsubutsu High were currently engaging a powerful foe in a heated battle, and for the most part he was getting the better of them. The villain sent one of them flying, then jumped out of the rubble cackling with glee. Grand, or going by his actual name, Yoshindo grit his teeth and groggily got up from the rubble. Despite his injuries, he still smirked at the villain. "That all you got?" Muscular laughed at the top of his lungs, genuinely amused by the bravado his opponent was putting up. He jumped at the other hero, who evaded his grasp using her quirk, which at first confused the villain, but he soon recovered. He was about to rush at her again, but Shindo jumped on his back and slammed his palms into him, releasing a huge vibration through his body, ripping out some of the muscle fibers on him. It seemed to have a positive effect, but Muscular grinned maniacally, before generating even more muscle fibers to cover himself completely. Shindo was overwhelmed and punched hard, sending him flying. However, Muscular wasn't done yet, and jumped after his target. But out of nowhere a green spark of lightning, and then a loud bang. He was sent rocketing back to the building he jumped from, and he trembled in excitement feeling the force behind the punch. There was a thick wave of smoke, which cleared to reveal a figure holding a barely conscious Shindo. Muscular. The villain's eyes widened in shock, then in pure ecstasy. He recognized that voice. It was the one person who made him feel alive in a fight. "Midoriya, it's really you, finally. No more small fry." the villain yelled, jumping at his new opponent. Izuku dodged him and pushed him back again, creating distance between them and dropping off Shindo by his teammate. I'll ask again. Where is 𝗓𝗏? Muscular took note of the tone in his voice. He wasn't kidding around. He grinned, stoked to go all out in a battle again. Fight me and I'll tell you. How about that? He offered. There was silence. It didn't seem like Izuku heard him, and he was about to speak again. But a fist to his stomach blew out all the air in his lungs and crashed him through the building. Muscular went to his knees and coughed violently, his eyes widening. In shock, Izuku quietly walked forward, stopping right in front of him. Where is he? Muscular ramped up his quirk to 100% and threw a punch which Izuku dodged, as if he had seen it coming already. He was then wrapped up in black tendrils and slung upwards through the roof and then down again. Izuku's eyes glowed ominously through the mask. Muscular roared in rage and broke free of his opponent's grasp. Enough of these stupid games. I'll kill you if you don't excite me. As he grew larger and larger, Izuku still didn't move, but instead observed him carefully. He then finally spoke up. So you still won't say anything? Very well. Muscular wasn't prepared for the speed at which Izuku moved at, and before his muscles could spread round his body, he received a critical hit in the midsection, causing his eyes to roll into the back of his head, and he passed out. Izuku looked at the unconscious villain, who was now foaming in the mouth. I guess I used too much force on him. He restrained the villain, dragging him over to the police, where the other two heroes were being treated. Shindo sustained some damage, but luckily, nothing too serious. Tatami, on the other hand, was relatively unharmed. She looked curiously at Izuku, who handed over Muscular to the villains, and she thought she recognized him. You. Do I know you from somewhere? She asked. I doubt that. Izuku replied before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. She looked at where he was just standing, and thought to herself, I swear I've seen him somewhere before. Izuku kept on his search for 𝗓𝗏, combing through every corner, interrogating any criminal he came across, and was now on the radar of the police, and by extension 𝐸𝐴. He had gone days without sleep, and very few meals through all this, most coming from 𝗓𝗏, who insisted he should keep in touch with him. He knew it was only a matter of time before he would meet another lackey of 𝗓𝗏, though a hired gun was certainly not what he was expecting. His rare meal was cut short by a bullet, which immediately caught his attention. He spun round and deflected another bullet, locking eyes with his new opponent. Former pro hero and renowned marksman, Lady Nagant. Unlike what she was expecting, Izuku didn't show any signs of fear, rather took his fighting stance. You're the one he sent me after. You're just a kid, she said in a slightly surprised tone. Izuku looked back at her, his senses on high alert. He had to think twice about his movements. One wrong move could end up badly, and getting injured was the last thing he wanted. I'll get my answers from you then, he replied as he released a thick smokescreen and jumped out of the way of another bullet, but like the previous one had to deflect it as it curved towards him. He created distance between them and thought on what to do. Well, it was pretty obvious. He had to disable her gun, but getting close enough without getting shot would be difficult. A battle of wits and skill ensued as Midoriya deftly avoided Nagant's precise shots. Utilizing his newfound combat awareness, he managed to disarm her and disable the sniper rifle. The confrontation reached its climax as Midoriya, fueled by his unwavering determination to save people, tried to help her. But as with most people who affiliated with 𝗓𝗏, she was stabbed in the back. Her body imploded on itself, taking him by surprise. This further pushed him into a mindless observation with the villain at the center of his focus. 𝗓𝗏 had to be stopped. Yet again he used someone as a pawn, a disposable tool. It was sickening to the core, and for the next few days he pushed himself further, until 𝗓𝗏 decided enough was enough, and stepped in himself. Young Midoriya, I think you've had enough. You look tired, 𝗓𝗏 said, concerned for his student. I'm fine, 𝗓𝗏. I can keep going, Izuku denied. That's what you say, but the way you look says otherwise. You need help, you need your friends, and you don't have to go on this alone anymore. 𝗓𝗏 pushed and prodded, trying to convince him that he didn't need to do everything alone. But Izuku remained adamant that he was going to work alone. Eventually Izuku left 𝗓𝗏 with words that he never expected from him. I don't need you following me around anymore. Izuku continued on his search for 𝗓𝗏, not stopping for even food or sleep. It was getting concerning, as his obsession with 𝗓𝗏 was the only thing driving him forward. He was going to find him, no matter where he was hiding. I will find you. All for one, Izuku could only cover his head, to at least limit the damage that his attackers were doing to him. He had come across villains which he defeated with force, but now in the face of Dictator. The villain, who was another foe sent after him by All for One, was controlling the movements of innocent people to attack him, knowing that the boy could not bring himself to harm them. Now, hero, what will you do? You can free these people, but that would mean you hitting them. That's unbecoming of a hero, isn't it? He cackled. He was right. Izuku couldn't bring himself to harming civilians. I can take this, he thought to himself. The hits became harder as time passed, and his mask fell down to the floor. His mind was racing, thinking of a way out, but the only way he could see was to hold out till the villain's quirk wore off. Suddenly, boom, a huge shockwave blew through the crowd of people, with enough power to free them from their controller. Izuku's eyes widened as he looked towards Bakugo, who landed and glared at him, with Izuku looking at him with no emotions in his eyes. The hell were you thinking, going off on your own? The blonde asked in an annoyed tone. Izuku's mask was down, showing just how worn out he was. The others soon caught up to them, and they gathered around him. They were worried about him, especially after seeing his conditions. The bags under his eyes, the mud all over his hero suit, which itself was worn out and looked like crap. You can't do this alone. We don't need you to save us, Deku, Uraraka said sadly. The others came around to talk him out of his mission. Izuku still didn't reply, but looked to the ground, refusing to look them in the eye. So now what? Where's that smile you should have in a crisis? Bakugo asked. I'm fine, Izuku replied, sitting up. He stumbled a bit, but caught himself, and finally looked at them. His gaze slightly hardened. That's an obvious lie. You look like shit. Why are you being so stubborn? Izuku stretched a bit, and yawned tiredly, but Bakugo grit his teeth, knowing the entire time that Izuku would not be going without a fight. We can still help you. You can't fight alone, Ida said. Izuku shook his head and slowly put on his mask, the pressure around them increasing, and his body erupting with green sparks of lightning, and his eyes glowing menacingly through his mask. I won't ask again. Get out of my way. They were taken aback by his tone, and even more when he exploded into a cloud of smoke. Don't let him get away, Bakugo yelled. Izuku, by the time the smoke was cleared, was already in the air, but Bakugo was in hot pursuit. How does it feel? Now that you're this strong, everyone else feels like an extra right. Izuku refused to answer. Escape was his only option. He didn't want to fight and very possibly injure his friends. Class 1 were shocked at just how hard it was to pin him down, despite his condition, tired, hungry, and sleep-deprived, and he was still overpowering most of them. Nothing they tried worked. They tried stopping him head-on, but it was futile. The truth about how strong Izuku actually was became clear. He seemed like a completely different person from the one that left almost a month ago. Momo tried to use sedatives to disable him, but he broke his restraints, only for Kaminari and Shoji to combine in an attempt to incapacitate him. But like the previous attempt, he powered through it and got free again. Shoto used a giant ice pillar to trap him, but it quickly began to crumble with the power the boy was exuding. They were both struggling, one to keep his friend stagnant, and the other to break free. Midoriya, stop this. You don't have to carry this burden alone. You were the one who taught me the value of others, and now you're going back on your own word. The ice user said. I have to go. Think about the people who care about you. I know, Izuku, about you and Fuyumi. What do you think she'll think seeing you like this? Please just let us help you. Don't be so stubborn. Shoto tried reasoning with him, but Izuku was adamant and struggled even more against the growing ice. That's exactly why I can't stop. If I do. All for on, enough about All for One. What about you? You look like shit. Stop this madness, Shoto yelled, cutting off Izuku. This obsession with All for One had to stop. Izuku started to break free from the ice, an almost psychotic look on his face. This is a fight between All for One and One for All. You guys can't keep up. Izuku shattered the ice pillar and shot out, using Black Whip and Fajin to create enough energy to shoot himself away from them. However, his classmates weren't going to give up so easily. With a combination of their quirks, they managed to get enough speed to catch up to him. Ida grabbed Izuku by the hand and said the same words Izuku had told him a while ago. Izuku couldn't bring himself to fight back, or muster the strength to break free from Ida, though a part of him wanted to go back to his friends. He did want to go back, to get a break, to let go of everything. As they were falling down from the sky, he used his float to lower them down gently. Izuku was still standing, despite everything. His classmates a bit alert, seeing as he could easily escape if he wanted to. "You're our friend, you know. Don't go jumping into fights alone. That's why we're here to help you. You may have one for all, but we can fight all for one together." "All of us," Mina said. Izuku still didn't say anything, and they were starting to think nothing was getting through to him. Bakugo stepped through to face him, and then spoke. "I've been an ass to you. I know that. Ever since we were kids, I always felt you looked down on me, even though that wasn't true. My ego blinded me, and I bullied you for it. When you got your quirk, it drove me mad to see you get stronger every day, and no matter how hard I trained, you still surpassed me anyways. I know now that what I did was wrong, and it was foolish. You don't have to go about everything by yourself, Izuku. We're here to support you, the way we can, and that's to be there with you in this fight, so please, just come back. And I am sorry for everything I have done to you," Bakugo said, bowing. Izuku's eyes widened. Then the fatigue caught up to him. He collapsed, but Bakugo caught him. For the first time in a while, he shed tears. Izuku passed out, the weeks of relentless pursuit taking its toll on him. The others watched this with somber spirits. Best Jeanist, who had accompanied them, was happy for them, that they managed to bring back their friend. However, that was just one of their problems. Izuku woke up a while later, seeing the newly fortified walls of UA, and then inside was quite the nasty surprise. The entire population yelled for him not to be let in. "He's the one who they're after," one yelled. "Yeah, bringing him here is a bad idea," another added. Izuku crumbled under the pressure, the rejection. He couldn't take it, he was tired, he was weak, and his will was at an all-time low. There were few who were there to comfort him, his mother, Kota, and a woman he had helped a while back. His classmates were shocked and appalled at their behavior. Uraraka took charge of the situation, and very boldly gave everyone a piece of her mind. Izuku, after persuasion, was allowed in, and he was taken into the dorms to recover. He sat down in the common room, bags under his eyes. He just woke up from a deep sleep. "Oh, you're awake. Thank goodness," Momo said, noticing that he had woken up. They all gathered around him, not knowing what to say to him. The air was tense. "Listen. I'm sorry for going off on my own, and for what I said. I just didn't want anyone getting hurt on my behalf," he said apologetically. "That's why we're heroes, right? We fight for the sake of others. You are no exception," Midoriya Ida said reassuringly. The class had a little closure, promising Izuku that he was not alone, and that they would all face all for one together. The doors to their dorms flew open, and in stepped a very angry-looking Fuyumi. Izuku's stomach dropped seeing her facial expression. She was not happy. Izuku was cut off by a slap. Then she took him by the arm and dragged him outside. "What was that about?" Kirishima asked in confusion. Outside, Izuku was getting nervous, but then Fuyumi turned around and hugged him tight. It started as a sniffle, then she cried. She was feeling a lot of things. She was angry he didn't tell her he was awake, that he went off on his own to fight all for one. She was happy he was safe, and she was saddened at the burden he was carrying. "You're such an idiot," she sniffled. Izuku looked down, sad that he made her sad, and worried about him. "I'm sorry, Fuyumi, I really am. But with everything that happened, I couldn't bring you into more trouble," he said in a low voice. "Just don't do something that dumb again," she said with a sigh. Izuku rubbed his face, remembering the sting he felt when she slapped him. Yeah, he wasn't too keen on getting that again. "I guess I deserved that," he said with a small laugh. "So no more secrets." "Okay, no more secrets," he agreed. His classmates inside were wondering what the hell just happened. Why did Shoto's sister do that? What was going on? They would soon get their answers. Izuku and Fuyumi came back. As usual, his friends voiced out their curiosity. "Is something wrong?" Both of them looked confused. Then Izuku had a small chuckle, realizing that their secret was probably out. "I mean, you just walked in here, slapped him, and dragged him off to who knows where." "There aren't much options to take from there," Jiru said, twiddling her jacks. "I guess so. Well guys, meet my girlfriend." Fuyumi Todoroki, Izuku said with a smile. "It's nice to meet you all," she said with a bow. What? When? How?" Kirishima yelled. "Midoriya, you bastard. How could you betray us?" the Minta and Kaminari duo asked in outrage. Bakugo too was surprised. He certainly wasn't expecting anything like that. "Did you know about this?" Mina asked Shoto, who nodded calmly. "I did know. It's not fair. Why does he get an older hottie?" Kaminari began to scream and freak out. I should probably get going, 𝐒𝐿 said as he left the room, going up to his room. The commotion downstairs was still loud enough to hear from his room. I hope this doesn't go on for long, he said with a sigh. His mind was still fuzzy, and he was still tired. He closed his eyes and drifted into the realm of the Sandman. The next morning he woke with a groan. Now that he had time to rest, his body was aching. He hadn't had sleep in a long time. He didn't even know he had slept till in the afternoon. But no one wanted to wake him up, he deserved the rest. Now that his mind was relatively back to normal, he realized one thing: he was hungry, and his stomach growled loudly in agreement to his thoughts. I'm so hungry. He slipped out of his bed and headed downstairs, greeting some of his friends along the way. He went to the kitchen and pulled out whatever he could find, with the others watching him. This is weird, 𝐓𝐻𝑖 whispered to no one in particular. 𝐒𝐿 had taken a huge bite of a broccoli and then downed it with a jug of milk. Yuge, that's disgusting, Toru said with a gag. Can you blame him? He probably hasn't eaten in a while, Momo said with a chuckle. 𝐒𝐿 continued to ransack the fridge, amazing them at how the human palate seemed not to care about the absolutely absurd combination of flavors due to hunger. Some were downright disturbing. He would probably pay the price for that later on, when his stomach came to its senses. At the end, he almost emptied the fridge, surprising his classmates at just how much he ate. He eats like a Saiyan, Sato remarked. 𝐒𝐿 was finally full, and laid down on the couch and passed out again. 𝐒𝐿 slept all day, till later that evening. He woke up to see the dorms empty. Where is everyone? He asked no one in particular. He looked around, but didn't find anyone. He then saw a note. We went for a strategy meeting. Be back soon, 𝐒𝐽. Huh. I guess I'm alone then, he said to himself. The door to the dorms opened and Fuyumi walked in. Hey 𝐒𝐿, I dropped by to check on you. How are you doing? His girlfriend asked with a warm smile, as she noticed he no longer had bags under his eyes, at least they weren't as pronounced as before. I'm better, you? He asked, smiling at her. She pulled off her jacket and sat next to him, nodding at his question. But 𝐒𝐿 wasn't really satisfied with the answer. Fuyumi, are you actually okay? I heard about what happened while I was trying to be Batman, she finished. They both laughed a bit. 𝐒𝐿 placed his hand on hers. You can talk to me, you know. I'm here for you. I know, 𝐒𝐿, I know. She sighed, leaning against him. It felt nice, just the two of them. 𝐒𝐿's heart was pounding, however. He had never been this close to her. Surely he wasn't the only one that was nervous, right? Thump. Thump. Fuyumi felt his heart beat faster and smiled. 𝐒𝐿 was so pure. It was almost too good to be true. And that was exactly the case. It was too good to be true, because right now he was going down the rabbit hole. Your heart's racing, she stated. 𝐒𝐿 chuckled and squeezed her hand softly. 𝐒𝐿? Kiss me, his breath hitched, and he slowly nodded. They both leaned in and kissed very lightly. Something was off though. They hadn't gone past this, and both wanted nothing more than to rip that barrier apart. 𝐒𝐿 kissed her again, but this time they held it for a little longer. Not there yet. Again they kissed, this time tracing the lines of each other's lips. Almost there. They broke up for air and went back again, this time breaking the barrier. Fuyumi slipped her tongue into his mouth and straddled him. 𝐒𝐿 groaned at the new sensation. It was unlike anything he had ever felt before. They eventually broke apart for the necessary breath of air. They were both panting, eyes clouded and bodies burning with passion. 𝐒𝐿, it's poking me, Fuyumi whispered to him. 𝐒𝐿's face went white for a moment, then red. Despite the fact that she pointed out his situation, she didn't get off him. It was an odd feeling, but she liked it. Plus, it was a natural response. Fuyumi, what are you doing? Fuck. Her ears pricked hearing him curse. That was out of character for him. 𝐒�l's breath hitched, and so did Fuyumi's as she found herself slowly grinding against him. It feels big, she had a naughty thought for a split second, but luckily they both snapped out of their little trance. That was nice. 𝐒� finished. A few minutes later his friends came back, but Fuyumi had left by then, and he had managed to put Small Might to sleep. He just had another new experience in his life, probably his best one in a long time. You seem chipper, Deku, Uraraka said. She was absolutely devastated when he introduced Fuyumi as his girlfriend. She had lost him, but she didn't want to let that ruin their friendship. He didn't know about how she felt, and she wasn't going to tell him. It's for the best, she thought to herself. I guess so, I'm feeling much better than yesterday, he said with a chuckle. Let's be real, dude. You've gotten a bit up, Like we had such a hard time just catching you, Kirishima said. Yeah, I guess that means we'll just have to catch up, Shiro said with a smirk. Izuku smiled back at them, though feeling a little guilty for making them go through such a hassle. Later that day, Fuyumi sent Izuku a text. Fuyumi, hey, so my mom wants to meet you, he blinked. What? Izuku, seriously? Fuyumi, like seriously, she's actually wanted to for a while now, Izuku. Okay then, though I won't lie, I'm nervous now that you told me, Fuyumi. Oh, don't be. My mom doesn't bite. She's really nice, Izuku. I'll take your word for it. XXX, oh man, Izuku thought as he was currently sitting in front of Rei Todoroki. Despite the kind aura she had, he was still nervous. Somehow even more than with 𝗵𝗃. Midoriya, or should I call you Izuku? She asked with a soft tone. Anyone is fine, ma'am. Rei chuckled seeing how rigid the boy was and gave him a reassuring smile. Please feel free. I only wanted to see you for myself. I've heard a lot about you from both Shoto and Fuyumi. So naturally I wanted to meet you, Izuku nodded, but still said nothing. Also, thank you for helping Shoto. I was actually able to watch your fight with him, and to see him embrace his power was something that made me happy. And now Fuyumi seems much happier because of you. Perhaps it was fate that you would cross paths with our family. I believe you had a positive impact in us, in NG, Natsuo, Fuyumi and Shoto. Thank you, Izuku, for being there. It's something I've always wanted to do. Sometimes people tend to focus too much on fighting villains as hero work. While it may have been me meddling in where I wasn't supposed to, I was glad I helped out somehow. If I have made even a small positive change in someone else's life, then my job as a hero is done. Rei smiled at him warmly. There's something I'd also like to ask you, Izuku. Izuku's ears perked up. What could that be? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Are you All Might's secret love child? At long last, the Great War was over. The heroes had won, but at a steep price. Shigaraki had been defeated, all for one vanquished. But it wasn't without any casualties. The most notable being the deaths of not only All Might, but 𝗵𝗃. 2 major blows to Japan, and the world at large. All Might came out of retirement for one final stand against his lifelong enemy, all to buy time for his successor. Izuku was too late. All Might was killed, but Bakugo stepped up and took down All for One, after being put on death's door himself. It shattered him, seeing his mentor, his idol, a father figure dead. And although All Might would always live through One for All, it would never be the same. Shoto had it rough as well, his entire family in mourning for the loss of NG Todoroki. 𝗵𝗃 sacrificed himself to take down his own son in 𝗬𝗏, in his final act of redemption. The entire nation took time to rebuild, but slowly we're getting there. Izuku stood by his girlfriend at 𝗵𝗃's funeral. She gripped his hand tightly as he was lowered into the ground, taking in the last sight of her father. She couldn't hold back the tears as she broke down. But Izuku was there to comfort her, although it wasn't like he was fine himself. But he had to be strong. He promised both All Might and 𝗵𝗃 that he would remain strong, as a pillar to support his loved ones. Shoto and Natsu also shed tears for their father, both vowing to carry on his will in them. Rei was at a loss for words, but her sorrow is evident. Could all this have been avoided? Alas, it was a question without an answer. They paid their last respects, and eventually everyone started to leave, except for Izuku, who moved elsewhere to the grave of All Might. The place was still covered with fresh flowers, and evidence of the people's adoration for the great hero, even in death. He sat there in the rain, the downpour masking his tears. I don't know what to do, All Might. We won, but at what cost? He asked no one in particular. Some people saw him there, but didn't want to interrupt him in his thoughts. One of such people was Aizawa, who knew how much All Might meant to his student. The man was basically his father. He stopped just as he spotted a white-haired woman slowly walk up to Izuku and sat next to him, leaning her head on his shoulder. Izuku wrapped his arm around her, both of them comforting each other in silence. Aizawa uncharacteristically smiled softly and walked away, happy that his student found someone he could lean on in times like this. Take care, problem child. Yue was never the same after that. Izuku Midoriya left the school, and for a while no one knew where he was. He completely disappeared from the face of the earth. His classmates were in shock when the news was passed to them. What do you mean he's not coming back? Sue asked, worried. I don't know the specific details, but he said he wasn't going to continue at UA, and I think it's the right choice. He needs a break from everything. He has lost too much in this war, Aizawa said. It's not going to be the same without him though, Jiru said sadly. Yeah, it certainly is an unexpected shock, Momo added. Shoto didn't say anything, having known all the while that Izuku was not going to come back to you. But he decided that he should be the one to tell them on his own terms. I can agree to that. However, look alive. He'll be back someday, and you all still have an entire year ahead of you, so make the best of it. I know that this war has changed things in ways that we can never hope to affect. We have lost comrades, friends, and mentors, but that shouldn't stop us from striving to be the best heroes we can be. We will carry their wills in our hearts and our actions. You wouldn't want to let our friends down now, would we? Aizawa asked with a small smile. Hell no. The class roared in response, filled with new determination and vigor. Aizawa smiled to himself, satisfied that he had gotten their spirits up. They needed the encouragement, especially now. Ahead of them was a tough road, one that revolved around rebuilding and re-establishing the honor of heroes in a broken society. Let's see how they fare. Without Midoriya XXX after that day, they didn't hear anything about Izuku, and most of the populace wondered where on earth he could possibly be. The only people who seemed to know where he was his mother and Fuyumi. School passed peacefully, and soon their class graduated and were about to be fully fledged heroes. They had gone through the year, with each of them finally crowned as fully fledged heroes. And finally their journey through 𝐸 had come to an end, which was saddening. Throughout their time there, they felt like family. All the joy, sorrow, and fear, they all went through them together. The preparations for their graduation was somber, but at the same time exciting. They would all face the world's problems, each with their part to fix. The day finally arrived, graduation. It was a bittersweet occasion, and Class 1 were about to head out for the ceremony, when a familiar voice greeted. Hey guys, it's been a while. Shoto smiled at his sister. It had been a while since he last saw her in person, but she didn't really look any different, apart from her hair being visibly longer. The person who walked in behind her, however, was a different case. Green hair as unruly as ever, emerald green eyes glowing brightly, and the smile they hadn't seen in such a long time. Hope I'm not late, he said with a chuckle, rubbing the back of his head. Midoriya. He was rushed by his friends who were overjoyed to see him. Dude, look at you. You're all manly now. Kirishima exclaimed. The hell have you been eating? Mina asked in shock at how much he had changed. Izuku did have a long overdue growth spurt, quite a few of them in fact. It's good to see you again, Izuku, Shoto said with a smile. Izuku smiled at his friend, then felt a strong palm on his shoulder. It was Bakugo. A heads up would be nice next time. Don't go disappearing without telling me again, he said with a low, but happy voice. I'm back now, and I won't be going anywhere, Izuku said. It's good to see you again, problem child, Aizawa said, happy to see that his student was doing well. Aizawa-sensei, it's good to be back. The man cleared his throat and spoke up. Now that my class is complete, I would officially like to congratulate you, and to let you know that I'm proud of you, all of you. When I first woke up to the racket you were making, I didn't think much of you. Hell, I wanted to expel you all on the spot. His words were met with a fit of laughter, and he himself couldn't help but chuckle at the memories. Certainly was the most interesting class in his entire career. But as time passed, I came to see the drive in each and every one of you, and the determination you all showed when it mattered the most. I was hard on you, because I wanted each of you to prove that I wasn't wrong to believe in you. And I'm happy to say that you all passed with flying colors. These 3 years I have taught you, but I also learned a lot from you. I am honored to have been your teacher, so break a leg, go out there into the world, and show the world what class can do. Yeah, Aizawa had taken quite a liking to his students. They were like family to him, each and every one of them, and he was proud to have taught them. No one noticed, but the man's eyes were a bit glossy from being emotional. It was like he was watching his chicks leave the nest, and he wished them the very best. These damned kids. Really gonna make me cry, he thought in amusement. Their graduation became even better with the return of one of their friends. He was still, and will always be a part of their class. He and Fuyumi watched them all with giggles, and then the crowd went into a full-on laughing spree when Bakugo gave his speech. That's typical Kachin, Izuku said, chuckling. Makes me wonder what you would have said if you had stayed, Fuyumi said, nudging him in the side. Izuku chuckled and looked up and thought. Yeah. Now that you mention it, I'd probably be a trembling mess. I'm still not good with speaking, he said with a sigh. They both giggled at the thought. He rubbed his hand through his hair, and they both looked at his hair, which was completely white at the base. His classmates hadn't noticed it, and he wasn't sure when he was going to tell them the truth, but he would someday. Crazy, huh? Who would have thought? He asked with a distant look in his eyes. Fuyumi chuckled, Despite the situation, she was sure he had moved on from it, but was also sure he would never really forget it. I mean, the man was his father at the end of the day. Like some classic anime trope, she said in amusement. Izuku's eyes lit up, and he turned to his girlfriend with a cheeky smirk. You know, today's technically my graduation too, he began. Fuyumi looked at him a bit confused, then started turning red as he made a small gesture. Well, I mean, I don't mind, she said, looking anywhere but at him. He suddenly burst into laughter and spoke up. That's not what I meant, Fuyumi. You've got quite the imagination, he said with a small smirk. Fuyumi huffed and looked away, red out of embarrassment at how perverted her mind was. Her phone buzzed, and she looked at it, then turned to Izuku, who feigned ignorance. Her red face seemed to redden even more as she read the message. But Ben looked back to him and smiled. I can do that.